don't care if I get shot. I can't wait to be treated. I gotta apply beside my place. That's my dad.
You know, we'll see how much. It's a little raspy. I'm okay. What it is, with the last one, I can't put in my pocket. I can't talk too much louder than I am. We'll see how I do.
He's got a place in Nick. I got a Drivl.
Yeah, good.
Parabola, 9/11, big one. It's got to take off. Keep going. This was a high-end hurricane. Rooted. My son, that home is happening. I'm turning my left. His house. He's got a snake. I know. Yeah, I don't know about that. Stole. Every answer. Still.
It's not ADA compliant, so you can, Irene had sent the link out to the back entrance to everybody that was on this email string and list and all that, and to the neighborhood that they were supposed to disperse it because that's what they requested. We can get his email address and email it.
No continuances.
Can you go back? The chairman's gonna say a few words first for all purposes. No, we have ours, and then we'll be back.
Okay, so I'm starting.
Yes, please. Thank you.
What would happen? I'm gonna try this one. Try it. Take off the mask.
Testing. That seems better. Okay, we're just doing a test, and then once we get the sound set here in a few seconds or a minute, then the chairman is going to have a few words to talk, and then we will start the presentation back at the beginning, and I will try to explain in more detail and go slower on each page.
We're going to reconvene the meeting. I'm sorry about that delay. We had some technical difficulties with the live streaming, and we couldn't go on without that. So apparently we have that fixed. Unfortunately, I have to read part of my opening statement again. I have to read part of that opening statement again for people who want to join online, so please bear with me. For all callers, prior to calling in with your comments, if you're watching the meeting from our website, please mute your computer so when you call in with your comments, there is no interference. To participate via phone, please call 386-223-1690. You will need to hit *9 to raise your hand to provide your comments when you would like to speak during public participation. You will be acknowledged by being unmuted, and you will hear a message that you have been unmuted. Please begin by stating your name clearly and slowly for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. When there's 15 seconds left of your 3 minutes, you will hear a beep, and then at the end of your 3 minutes, you'll hear another beep, and you will be muted at that time. You will not be disconnected from the meeting. All callers will have the opportunity to speak. Please be aware there may be a short pause as we switch to the next caller. We're sorry for that inconvenience there. We're going to start again with the staff presentation. Thank you.
Good evening again. Bill Hoover, I'm a planner with the city. The subject property is 280.6 acres. It's proposed to be redeveloped for institutional uses along US Highway 1 and residential uses on the balance of the site, and those would be clustered on designated tracks throughout the MPD. The areas marked SP are the subject properties, and you'll see those scattered throughout the project. And the institutional uses are on the left side of the screen between London Drive and US Highway 1. This is a flume map. What that stands for is Future Land Use Map. So anytime you want to rezone property, the first thing you do is look at the future land use map, because each designation, in this case it's Greenbelt, you go to the Greenbelt section of the comprehensive plan and it will tell you what specific zoning type uses are allowed. And so Greenbelt does allow 1 home per acre. However, we have some conservation land in the southwest corner of the site where the blue oval is along US 1. That's conservation. There's no residential or non-residential land uses allowed to develop in that area. This is the zoning map with all the different letters on there. So the subject property is shown south of the canal in the blue hatched. It's hatched with the white, and it stands for, you'll see all the MPDs, there's probably 4 or 5 of them. And that stands for Master Planned Development, which is the subject property zoning today. But there's no development order, so they really cannot build until they get a development order approved. The property to the west of US 1, that's Palm Coast Park, MPD, where the Sawmill subdivision is currently under construction, roads and homes. If we go to the northwest part of the site, there's a little area designated AC. That's a Flagler County zoning designation because it's in Flagler County. It stands for Agriculture and Conservation. To the north of that, there's some couple parcels, EST1, EST2. That's just a low density development, typically like 1 home per acre. And the red areas up there, those are COM2 or general commercial zoning districts along US Highway 1, which is pretty common throughout US 1. North of the subject property and along the canal, you will see the letter up there, PSP. That stands for public, semi-public, and typically a lot of the city's facilities or if the county has a facility on the city's property, we'll designate it, let's say PSP, like the public library might be an example. If we go to the east of the subject property, we'll see in gold some properties like a whole blocks typically. Those are designated SFR2, which is including most of the lands next to the subject property. The yellow lots those are the ones SFR3, which are a minimum of 10,000 square foot. To the south of the subject property, we have a little bit of multifamily. That's if you'll see MFR1, that stands for multifamily residential 1. It allows homes at like 8 units per acre. The golf course opened in 1985. It was one of 4 courses that ITT developed, and the zoning at that time was it was in Flagler County, so it was their own zoning district, urban single family residential R-1B. That allowed 3 homes per acre if it was developed from a golf course to something else. In 2004, the city adopted their first comprehensive plan. That dropped the density, since they put the designation on the future land use map of Greenbelt, that capped the density of at 1 home per acre. In 2005, the following year, the city adopted its initial land development code, which was the first 4 chapters, including the zoning section, and that designated the property as GCC, which was golf course community. The golf course permanently closed in 2007. In 2008, the city did a citywide rezoning, and at this time, we finished the rest of our land development code, and the subject property was rezoned from golf course community to MPD, or master plan development. As well, at this time, we carried over the previous provisions of GCC that covered any redevelopment of a golf course community. So that transferred over to the MPD district at that time. And these golf course redevelopment criteria are specifically located in section 3.03.04J of the Land Development Code. The applicant purchased the property in 2019, and then late last fall, they submitted a rezoning for the MPD. So it's going from MPD to MPD, but they're adding a development agreement with it. Essentially, in their request for this rezoning, they want to put the institutional uses along Highway 1. They also want to develop residential uses at a density of 1 home per acre over the residential portion of the site, except for lands designated conservation on that future land use map. So that's actually about 4 acres. As proposed by the city staff, the lands that end up being zoned and used for institutional uses, those are non-residential, so you don't get to double count those kind of uses. So they started with 280.6 acres. 4 acres are conservation, so that drops the number of usable acres for residential to 278, And as staff proposed, you'll see that we're supporting 8 acres of non-residential uses for institutional. So that comes off the 276. So the maximum number of homes as staff is proposing would be 268 homes. And the residential, you get credit for all 268 acres. And really the question tonight is where should those 268 homes be located? Section 2.0505 of the Land Development Code is a very common part of the redevelopment process and hearing process. So we discuss this almost every evening that we're at the planning board for each project. And there's 5 criteria in here. A, must not be in conflict with the public interest. It needs to be in consistency with both the comprehensive plan and the land development code. So that comprehensive plan includes that future land use map, which is probably the most important part of it. C, must not impose a significant liability or hardship on the city. D, must not create unreasonable nuisance or hazard. And E, must comply with all applicable government standards. And that would include the other sections of government besides the city. This is section 3.0304J of the Land Development Code. And for this project, it's the most important part of the code as far as what we need to apply in this MPD rezoning. And what it really states is existing golf course communities located within the former golf course communities district seeking to add residential units must comply with the standards established for the master plan development district. In addition, the development shall utilize the following guidelines in order to minimize adverse impacts on any abutting single-family residentially zoned areas. There's 3 criteria in here, and the first one states existing direct golf course views from the rear yards of all existing platted lots located within any residentially zoned districts directly abutting the site shall be maintained. Peripheral, in essence, side views from these existing rear yards may be impacted by new development, and new development may be visible from existing development. Existing golf course views from existing platted lots located within any residentially zoned area across a right-of-way, which typically is a street, or a water body from the site shall be maintained to the maximum extent practical. The third criteria is multifamily uses shall be surrounded by fairways, clubhouse, and or other golf course facilities to buffer single-family areas within the same development. The multifamily uses shall not be located within 150 feet from any existing platted lots located within a residentially zoned area. Okay, this sort of summarizes what staff, what we're applying to this particular rezoning. And one of the things that we've found is the Land Development Code does not quantify the depth or thickness of the, you'll see the view protection zone, abbreviation being VPZ in here quite a bit. And more than likely, it was not quantified since both factors, width of the VPZ and the amount of vegetated screening, affect the quality of a VPZ. So, and it's clear that new development does not need to be completely out of view and may be visible from existing properties. So in essence, a 50-foot buffer that's heavily landscaped and sometimes with a berm might be more effective than a 100-foot area with a few shrubs that's got grass. This is Exhibit B in the Master Plan Development Agreement, and really it's the conceptual site plan for the entire project. And you'll see staff's on the right, the applicant's on the left. And on tracks 1, 3, and 9, we have major differences on those. And on the balance of the tracks, they're minor to sometimes moderate. So since it's hard to see this one, we put the individual tracks on each slide. And we'll start with track 1. So this is where the golf course maintenance building is and the old clubhouse and stuff like that. So the area along London Drive, we're in agreement. Once you get to east of Lakeview, we're sort of in agreement. And then inside the 2 ovals that are in purple on staffs, that shows the area that we're not agreeing with. And essentially the developer with that tan area, that shows where they would like to have development occur. And in this case on track 1, those are SFR 1, which are the smaller residential lots. This is an area that's northeast of Lakeview Drive, and it's essentially extends clear over to the interstate. There's not very much development occurring here. The one area that we're in a disagreement with is along Lake Success Drive, where you'll see on the bottom of staff's drawing, we placed a circle. If you look over to the applicants, they're showing that as SFR2 zoned lots. But the reason staff is not supporting that is because the lots, there's single family lots there. I believe there's 4 that back up to that area. And if they develop it as shown on B, it does not meet the criteria we just went through in section 30304 about having a view protection zone behind those 4 lots. This is track 3, where we probably differ the most. In staff on the right, we're basically saying that there should be a view protection zone along the homes that back up to the fairways that are located south and southwest of Lakeview Boulevard. If you see the large 3 on the applicant's map, just to above that is Lakeview Boulevard. And the applicant's proposing SFR2 homes there after they're providing, I believe it's 100-foot wide view protection zone for the homes along the opposite side of the course. This is track 4. It's the area south of Leidel Drive and north of Lewis Drive. Probably the most key difference here is that they have, the applicant's proposing a stormwater pond on the middle of track 4. Staff is proposing, we show ours with the gold oval there, that we're proposing to keep that as natural area. Inside the 3 oval red circles, red ovals, on staff's drawing, we're showing that we want the view protection zones a little bit wider. And if you go over to the applicants, they don't want to provide any view protection zones there. So in staff's opinion, it does not meet section 3.0304J of the Land Development Code. This is track 5 that is close to Lee Drive. And this is one that at least staff and the applicant and maybe most of the people in the room are in agreement with. Basically, all of track 5 would stay as a view protection zone and just remain natural. On track 6 and 7, this is the area south of London Drive, and so it would be west of where the clubhouse used to be located. On track 6, the applicant's showing another stormwater pond, and you can see that staff is recommending that that stay as natural area, and we're showing that with a gold oval. On track 7, where London Drive makes the turn going east-west to south, there's about 2 lots there that the applicant wants to put single-family homes or lots there, and staff's to put a red circle there because that would not provide any view protection zone for the 2 lots on Lever Drive. This is tract 8, clear at the south end of the subject property. It's in the southwest quadrant of London Drive and Londonderry Drive. So Londonderry Drive is sort of running from like 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and then London Drive is running from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. The applicant's drawing is shown on the left, and the major differences are we've got if you look at the applicant, I'm sorry, staff's, we've got a gold circle there. We do have it, they have agreed in the MPD agreement that it would stay, any multifamily development would stay 150 feet. So there's some lots on the north side of London Drive close to that intersection. So any multifamily, the development has to stay 150 feet away. I think London Drive is, let's say, 50 feet wide, counting the right of way. So the first 100 feet of that lot would have to remain as natural area, or they could develop it as, let's say, single family residential. So they have agreed if for any multifamily that's developed on this tract, that it would be limited to 2-story townhouses, not to exceed a height of 35 feet. The other alternative that they've requested that staff concurs with is they could also develop it for SFR1 single family lots. If you look at staff's drawing up there, we've got a purple circle there. And this is actually where the canal comes through there. And then it's going southwest, and then it sort of turns to the northwest and goes underneath US Highway 1. Actually, right now, this is designated conservation on the future land use map, and so no development would be allowed there. Now, the applicant has stated, and he may be correct on that these lands might have been inappropriately designated conservation. So if that is true, then they would need to amend the comprehensive plan with like a map amendment and get that changed. And you can see where it says, note this area is greenbelt on the flume, which is, there's a little triangle in the green area at the top, and the point of the triangle is going down. That area is greenbelt. So it's really that canal area where it's running that is the area of question, whether it's conservation, which we have it right now, or if it might get changed in the future. Okay, in this case, these are tracks 9 and 10 along US Highway 1, and the north arrow is to the right. So you sort of need to figure that the plan's been rotated clockwise, a 90-degree angle. where you see applicants spelled out there, that's where US Highway 1 is. And then where the number 10 is for applicants, that's approximately where London Drive goes along there. The main difference here is the applicant is proposing approximately 20 acres of institutional uses on tract 9, whereas staff is proposing 8. In the reasoning that staff came up with 8 acres was where you see tract 10, which has the letter B there for SFR2 single family home sites. We concur with that, except that we're requesting some view protection zones on each end. So not too much difference there. However, the area behind that, because those are not existing platted lots, the section 3.304J does not really apply to that area. So we've supported the institutional uses on that area there because it's not behind anybody's existing platted lot. Okay, this takes us back, we made a full circle. We're back to the conceptual site plan. And so you can see the whole thing again there. And so you see we've got changes on tract 1 between the applicants and ours. And then if we go a little bit to the south, you'll see a big difference on tract 3, which is the southwest side of Lakeview Drive. And then the other major one is tract 9 running along US Highway 1. Basically, this gets back to the section 2.0505, which I mentioned, the 5 review criteria. We provided pretty detailed findings in the staff report on this. And essentially, there is a MPD development agreement, which we created, and we added what the applicant did not agree with. We added their proposed changes in red text so it would stick out for everybody rather than having a whole separate document, which creates a lot of confusion. And if you have to print it out, waste a lot of paper. So as conditioned by staff, really there's a few changes in the MPD agreement, but almost all the changes match up with the exhibits that we just went over. So if you think of the ovals that staff put on our maps, so what we're saying here is, yes, this project does meet the section 2.0505 of the Land Development Code as conditioned by staff. The MPD rezoning will not create a nuisance, hazard, or any compatibility issues as it meets all development standards and is in compliance with the designations of the future land use map and matches up with the comprehensive plan. And as conditioned by staff, it would also meet all standards for development in the Land Development Code. Each project that's of any significance, there's a requirement that we call public participation. On November 15th, the developer mailed out notices to property owners. The requirement is 300 feet around the project. If I'm not mistaken, they went beyond that just to be extra cautious and to provide notice to more people. And so that notice was mailed out by first class mail on the 15th, and the meeting was held, and most of us probably attended that, at 6:00 p.m. on December 5th in Matanzas High School. And a quick count by staff estimated 250 to 325 members of the public there, as well as 4 people representing the applicant, and 5 city staff members were also there. On September 16th, the city put an ad in the newspaper. We also put together 7 orange signs that the applicant put up. And obviously we had a lot of storms that week. And so I'm sure they're probably beat up by now. Additionally, the city staff sent out emails to any resident that attended the neighborhood meeting and provided their email to staff. Once the planning board gets done with this project and forwards it on to the city hall, the city will have 2 rezonings on it. And at the first meeting, then it will come back a couple weeks later for the second meeting. And if that's approved by the city council, they can approve it the way the applicant wants. They can approve it the way the staff wants, or anywhere in between, or they can recommend denial. But presuming that it's approved by the city council in some format, the applicant would have his engineer submit a preliminary plat with construction drawings showing the lots where the water, sewer lines, the grading, any stormwater ponds, that type of thing. And that's reviewed by city staff, primarily engineering and some of our environmentalists and other specialists. At that point, they would actually be allowed to commence construction. And as they finished the legal part of it with their surveyor, it would go to city council for final adoption. And that's pretty much a formality at that point. If you meet the criteria, the city council is basically going to approve that. Planning staff recommends that the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board find this master plan development as conditioned by staff in compliance with both the comprehensive plan and the land development code, and recommend that city council approve the Lakeview Estates MPD application number 4150 as presented by city staff, including number 1, delete the red line text within the MPD development agreement, and 2, utilize versions of Exhibit B, the master concept plan, and exhibits B1 to B9 that are dated September 24th, 2020. Applicants' representatives are in attendance and their presentation will follow. And the applicant is Alex Ustilovsky, attorney Michael Cimento, and the landscape architect is Robert Dickinson.
Does that conclude the staff application or presentation? All right. Now we'll move on to the applicant's presentation.
Good evening, planning board members. Michael Cimento, is this on? Can you hear me? Testing, how's that? Is that better? Again, Michael Cimento, I appreciate your time tonight, the public coming out for this hearing. It's been about a year and a half since we first met with the city staff yes, sir. I think they just turned it down. Is that better? Testing. Test, is this better? Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Very good. Okay. Again, it's been about 11 months since we met with the public. There were a few people there at Matanzas High School. And, pardon me? Echoing?
It's a pretty good echo.
Okay. They want to shut the door. We'll see what we can do. So When we were at the meeting planning board, yes, there were a lot of people. We presented a plan that we had been working on with staff for some time, for approximately 6 months to a year. We had worked with your engineering department, your stormwater department, your environmental department on coming up with a plan, and we presented that plan to the community. And I'll just say that there were some comments. We're required to keep track of all the comments so that we can come back and work with staff. And we had about 2 full pages of comments. But the good thing about all those comments from the public were that they could be categorized into subject matters. So we'll get to that in a second. I think your staff put together the history of this project very well. And as they said, in 2007, the golf course closed. And then shortly thereafter, because of such, in 2008, the city changed the zoning on that from golf course community to the MPD agreement, our zoning district, which then requires us to come back with a plan that meets some of the other requirements of the land development code. So I think it's very helpful if we can start with some facts that we agree on. Getting to yes is easy. So yes, this is not a golf course. It has not been a golf course. I think Mr. Netz said that at one of the last planning board meetings, is that we need to stop referring to this as a golf course, because it's not. The other thing that we need to address that is of the public concern was the historical mowing of this property. I know the city sent out a letter some time ago, about within the last month, that I think gave information to the community that said why the property had stopped being mowed. And that's because when land goes back to its natural state, the city does not require it to be mowed. So in May of 2019, when we purchased this property, the first thing we did is we went out on site, met with the city staff, Barbara Grossman was one of there, and we removed all the buildings, all the infrastructure. There were homeless camps out there, and we removed the asphalt that was there so that it was being restored back to natural. So if we understand that where we start from today, that it is not a golf course, and that it is intended to go back to natural, except for the plan that we ultimately, hopefully get approved one way or the other, that'll be the new development. And that the comp plan does permit that the property be developed, as staff said, up to 168 units. So I think Ray said it very well. Mr. Tyner says this is about where do we locate the 268 units. And then as it was also said by Bill, it's where should these 268 homes be located? So we're sitting here in a situation where we're talking about not how or if this can be developed, because it certainly has entitlements all the way back to the 80s. It could be developed, but we're talking about how does this thing get developed so that it has as less an impact on the existing community as necessary. So when we went to the public meeting, we came up with all these comments. You all have those, or I don't know if they're in your staff report, but staff has discussed this with them. And they come down to a few issues, and they're all very similar issues in most developments. And those are traffic, environmental, what happened to the old golf course, and then flowing from the old golf course were some comments through social media and letters about contaminants, water and sewer, stormwater and flooding, which is an important issue specifically today. Lot sizes and compatibility were brought up, property values, schools, maintenance of the property, which we can talk about here shortly. And then the real significant issue that we're addressed with today is buffers and this view shed or view protection zone. So I think we've addressed all these issues with staff, and we'll go through there very shortly about all those issues and how they've been addressed. And when we go through the development process, both at the city and the state and the federal level, these things have to be addressed, and we ultimately get permits and have to prove to those government agencies and scientists that it complies. So let's talk about traffic. Traffic. The city did a traffic study out in the Matanzas area, and particularly Lakeview Boulevard in 2019, and the traffic capacity was determined out there. And so what we're required to do under the state and local guidelines is do a traffic study. That traffic study is dictated by the city and their model. And the traffic study shows that yes, because we put up to 268 units in those areas, zones 1 and 3 particularly, that there will be more cars on that main drag, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a problem. The intersections have capacity and the roadways have capacity. So that issue has been satisfied as is required by the city code. Environmental and bugs and bunnies, as we call it. So we do an environmental impact study as is required. That looks at endangered species. It looks at other things such as exotic fauna or that type of stuff. And so those issues are resolved, and we have developed our plan to avoid any impact that may occur to gopher tortoises and other species that are located on the property. The old golf course we talked about, it hasn't been a golf course since 2007, and in fact was changed from golf course to this zoning district in 2008. So years ago, or particularly in December, there was a lot of discussion in our comments is that, you have to maintain the golf course that we bought on a golf course and those issues. And we can appreciate that, but I don't think there's anything in the law that requires anybody to maintain and operate a golf course, particularly when it failed after many years. So we just need to start off with the premise that it's not a golf course anymore and that it is going back to its natural state of woods. So knowing that it was a golf course, we received some emails, both on social media and from people in the community about the contaminants, and it was a legitimate concern. I mean, we'd all have read on the internet these issues of contaminants of old golf courses. So we commissioned a study, the city staff has it, and particularly people were concerned about levels of arsenic or other contaminants out there. So we hired one of the regional's top engineering firms, Atlantic Ecology, and that's in front of it should be in your packages. And it talks about specifically arsenic and those types of chemicals that are used on the golf course. So the report shows that when you look at all the tee boxes and all the greens and all the fairways that we did soil borings in a 1/2 foot to 2 foot below surface grade, that the entire golf course came back well under the normal limits that are required and that exist today. However, on the driving range area, there were some levels that were a little higher. So what the DEP, the states, Fed, and the city requires is that prior to going out and moving any dirt and doing any development in just the driving range areas, that you have to do additional tests. And what happens is that if those contaminants are found at certain levels, the developer has to remove them and replace them with good soils. So that was a good find by the community to ask us to look at that. I mean, we would have found that eventually because we're required to by law, but to satisfy the community's concerns at the December 12th meeting, we went ahead and did it anyway. So this issue of arsenic levels or other chemicals on the golf course has been resolved, and city staff will require that additional remediation and testing when and if, or I should say when, the driving area range is impacted. So that deals with the contaminants. Water and sewer. The city just built their water sewer plant, floated another bond for their water sewer plant. Your city staff says there's plenty of capacity for water and sewer to service not only this region, but all of Palm Coast into the foreseeable future. Let me skip to schools. So schools is a design process. The city of Palm Coast and Flagler County and the district have what's called an interlocal agreement, ILA, and it was required by the state in 2004 or 6 that said cities and school districts, you all have to get together and plan for future schools. Schools are expensive. I would tell you that a new high school, given all the requirements for it, are roughly, $40 to $60 million. So they're not small change, and they need to be planned for well into the future. So for the last 10 years, 12, 14 years, the cities and the school district and the county have all worked together under this interlocal agreement to share information to address the schools. And in fact, part of it is that you have a school board member. I guess you're not a member, you're the planner, that sits on your planning board to give you some guidance and comment. And that's part of your interlocal agreement that you serve. So what does that requirement, what does that interlocal agreement require? It says before you can actually plan and do a plat, or really it's called final plat, you have to get what's called a school concurrency letter from the school district that basically shows where your kids are going to go, what's it going to cost if there's any mitigation for that, and you pay your impact fees. So there's a whole process that we do week in or month in and month out with developments all over, not only in Flagler County, but St. Johns County. So it's a defined plan under this interlocal agreement. So schools have to be addressed, and they will be addressed into the future. Property values. When we went back and looked at and watched the film again, property values was a theme, but really they were themes associated with two sub-issues. And that was size of the lots and size of homes. You know, are these homes going to be small? Are these homes going to be, lots going to be small? Are there values? And so we had some discussions about that. And then the other issue that is out there, you know, and I think we all understand that you can't believe social media, is that this was going to be a low income housing, Section 8 housing, all of that. That is not true at all. We're fine to put in the PUD and represent and warrant that this isn't going to be any tax credit housing, any Section 8 housing or low income housing. So it gets back to this lot house package value that complements the community. So we had a realtor in town, and we presented that at the December meeting about the average sales price in the Matanzas area. And it was about, at that point in time, $270,000 was the average sales price in the previous 6 months. And so, you know, we're proposing, and Mr. Usilowski is already doing another development in Palm Coast where his lot house packages are starting in the low 300s. But to address that issue with the community, we went back and looked at it. And you'll see, I handed you the PowerPoint presentation on track 3. Our initial plan had smaller lots on track 3, double loaded road with 50-foot lots. We've changed that, and now we want to propose that whatever lots are built on the golf course area or the vacant area, is that they are the same zoning district as the adjacent lots. So we're prepared. We went back and we redesigned track 3 to provide for 12,000 and 8,000 square foot lots, which are complementary and the same, and if not larger than the adjacent lots. So we hope that addresses the issue of value, complementary to the adjacent neighborhood, and consistency. So that took care of the comments about property values and the fear of low income housing or tax credit housing. So as we're going down this list, I'm getting to some of the more difficult ones that we need to talk about, and with the big one at the end, and that is maintenance. So there was what's going to happen with the maintenance of the golf course at that point in time. Well, we know it's not a golf course, and we know it's going back to its original state of woods. So there is no requirement to mow the old fairways and maintain the open spaces. But notwithstanding, we've entered into an agreement with the city where we're mowing additional areas along the right of way to make sure that the entire area that abuts the roadways that we own are kept up to city standards. And so we've heard a lot of communication from the public. They've contacted Alex, they've contacted myself, they've contacted Barbara and Ray, and we do our best to address those issues as they come up, but there is no obligation any longer to mow the entire property as it was when it was an active development. And we will continue to mow the rights of ways. And in our plan also, there was some comments by the public. I mean, who's going to maintain this? Well, this will all be, the stormwater ponds will be maintained by a homeowners association, just like every other development that happens in Flagler County and in the Northeast and in Florida, where you have a homeowners association that will maintain the roads, will maintain the stormwater, will maintain the rights of ways, will maintain all the lakes and vegetation, just like Grand Haven, just like the rest of them that a lot of people live in. So the maintenance issue, I think we've addressed. So these are all issues that we've addressed with staff over the last 10 months. I think they're satisfied because they weren't part of their concern in their presentation, but recognizing that we have lots of people here tonight and on TV or Zoom, whatever the case may be, we do want to address those issues, and they'll have some time shortly to ask additional questions. So that kind of leads us with a couple of really just two major issues that we believe. And that is, that's view shed buffers, VPZ we talked about. And I think where we're at is it's undefined, as staff said. What is reasonable is in the eyes of the beholder, obviously. We've talked to people that live on the golf course. Some people want lakes, some people don't. Some people want it to remain exactly the way it is, which it won't because it's going back to natural. Some people want forest. So the couple of dozen homes that are on the golf course that would be impacted by our proposed development clusters, you know, they all have a little bit different ideas of what's acceptable in this view shed protection area that we're talking about. Should it be 20 feet? Should it be 50 feet? Should it be 3 miles? And I don't know how to address that. And I think that's ultimately the decision of City Council, but obviously something that you would address here tonight to talk about and make a recommendation in some capacity to the council. So I'd like to just get back to establishing a fact that whether the view shed protection zone is 35 feet or 100 feet, whether it's a lake or whether it's forest or whether it's, you know, trees or whether it's azaleas, whatever it is, it's not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan or with the land development code. Because it's an undefined term, you all and the city council get to define what is reasonable, not only for our development rights, to maintain our development rights, but to complement and protect the community. So this is really a balancing test. And you know, I'll ask Ray if you agree with that statement as to whether if it's 100 feet or 50 feet or 300 feet, it's not a violation of the land development code or the comprehensive plan. So we can get into that with our conversation with it. So we think that the big issue that remains is the view shed protection zone and how it impacts the areas that we're proposing development. And we do different than staff, and we've had lots of conversation, and it's a hard conversation, and they're very gracious, but they've been firm that they don't want to make a decision that is consistent with ours or different than where they have. So we prepared a presentation to show you to address just that. Before we get started on that, I will say this, that because there have been so many iterations, probably 6, 7, 8 different plans that we've been working with staff, the side-by-side comparison that you saw by Mr. Hoover did not show our exact up-to-date plan on all the tracks, as we'll go through one by one. So I'm going to represent to you that Bill's plans as to what the city said is their plan, and what we're going to show you in the comparison is what we're proposing to you all to consider. So if we can start that, please. So this is our MPD conceptual plan. And where it's different, planning board, is that the on track 1, where the blue is, that's an existing lake. We'll get to that. 1 second, Bill, or Vincent. No, other way. There we go. So what you saw on Bill's presentation was an iteration from back in January or February. And for various reasons, this is where we ended up. So on track 1, ours were different because we're proposing a 50-foot vegetative buffer, a view shed protection zone along the back of these lots there. We did go back and we do agree that on the sides of these lots on track 2 that there needs to be a view shed protection zone. So much like the city staff approved these that we're willing to get to. And then really the big ones are 3 and 9. And then some of the minor issues are 4 and 6. So again, this is our proposed plan that's in front of you. And the next one is the city plan. So if you just go back and forth, it just kind of show people what the difference is. So really, as it relates to track 1, you know, there's some larger view shed protection zones. So what staff and I thought would be helpful to you all is when we get into a discussion, because it's such a large mass area and track, that we could address the issues as it relates to each track. So can we go to track 1? So this is track 1. This is our proposed plan here on the left, and that's the city's proposed plan on the right. And the big difference is in this area down here and along the top, okay? we're proposing 50 feet along there. And to give people some scale, it's kind of hard to tell when you're looking at 200 and something acres, but this room is roughly 80 by 50. So to give you some scale, the view shed protection, remember, because this property is going to go back to its natural state, whether it's today or in 10 years when it's developed. So it'll all be grown back up into trees and forest. And what we're proposing is that along that area, that we keep it naturally vegetated, and we're willing to put some plantings there to accelerate its growth a distance of 50 feet, which is roughly the width of this room. Okay, so we'll get there. So now we've got that, and so that's what we're proposing on track 1. Keep the lake and do that. But there's alternatives that we can do. And one of the reasons that we're not comfortable with staff's proposal is because we have this entitlement for 268 residential homes that we're trying to cluster. And if we were to accommodate staff's proposal, which is here, it would force those units to be densely clustered in the beige area, and would require those lots to go to even a smaller size, probably 45s or 40s. Which we heard from the community that they weren't comfortable with. And so we were proposing that they be the larger lots, which is why we wanted this. But notwithstanding that plan, which we're proposing, we can do some things that are creative that we can't just, we're not able to, I'll just be very candid, we're not able to negotiate with staff because of various reasons. So we're here to talk to you about. The next slide, please. So this is what we overlaid a conceptual layout of what the community would look like. This is just one of many possibilities. But you can see here the 50-foot buffer between the existing homes that would basically be returned back to forest. Down here, it's a little larger, down into the 70s and 80 feet. And out here, we have areas along the roadway that would be buffered too. So it would be a very screened community. The other thing that we did is this area here, it was never a golf course, and it was always just woods, but we've agreed to put a 50-foot buffer behind these homes too, so that the homes aren't butting up to each other. So that's where we are. And one of the reasons we have to do it that way is because we're providing stormwater. And we talk about stormwater all the time, and that is a big issue now, is that right now, the water as it flows presently on this parcel of land, track 1, it sheet flows in various different directions. Well, what we're required to do under state, federal, and city guidelines is capture all our water that rains up to a 100-year flood event, put them in our ponds, and then discharge into, is it the Jefferson Davis waterway? Is that correct? So the water from our property has to go through our ponds and our stormwater system, and it will no longer go into the gutters, or I guess we don't have gutters, we have our swales up in that area. So our stormwater system will improve what is presently out there. But that's with the 50-foot, okay? But we think we can do better, and we think we can go to 100 feet, but that requires the next concept slide. And so can you go to the next one? We think we can add value to a lot of people's homes and accommodate our development by shifting some of this and moving this from 50 feet along this buffer to a minimum of 100 feet. But we would need to put the stormwater ponds there and add additional volume, because if it grows, we lose area elsewhere on the development to put our ponds. So we're proposing we can either put 50 feet of a forest between those existing lots, because that's what it'll be in 4 or 5 years, and we'll put an easement and a conservation easement over it. Or the community can be waterfront now, 100 feet. And I think this room is about 80 feet long is what we measured, 88 feet long. So to give you some scale as to how wide those ponds would be at a minimum. So that's track 1. We can either go back, what we're proposing is either this 50-foot forest, 70, 80 feet here, 50 feet roughly, or 100 feet, which is of ponds and stormwater. And again, that would benefit, we think, not only the community from a stormwater retention area, but go back to that issue that we heard at the meeting about values. So that's track 1. Track 2 is the next track. We agree with most everything. We've been working with your staff since December of 18, and the property was in foreclosure and it was in bankruptcy and there was $700,000 in fines. And so we were talking to staff about, you know, how can we help the city with stormwater? And there were some discussions. That has not been accepted by the city about building extra stormwater ponds on our property, which we were talking about with them. But I think we are both in agreement, but we would like to have these lots here where staff says none, but we have to put the vegetative buffer zone on these areas so that those people's views will remain the same and that will remain as woods. So that's track 2. Now the big one is here's track 2 as an overlay. So you can kind of see, here's our, this is 25 feet on the sides here. And up there it's the same, and then the rest of it will remain natural and go back to forest. Track 3 is very important to our project. Staff recommends nothing. We don't think that's acceptable because their proposal limits our ability to place and cluster appropriately our units. So on the right is staff's proposal and on the left is ours, okay? We had started off there in December of putting a road down the middle of the beige area with lots on both sides. They were 50 foot by 100 feet deep. This community was very concerned about compatibility, about values, very concerned about that. And so we went back and we did some re-engineering. And what we want to do, what we're proposing to you is to just do single lots along that road. And we're proposing to put 100-foot vegetative buffer and viewshed protection zone around here. And actually down here, it will actually be more. We'll show you in just a second. So this is what we'd like. It's 100 feet. Staff is saying absolutely nothing. And we'd like to do the following design. Next one. So this is a concept that fits. As you can see, these are 12,000 square foot lots. So they're actually bigger than this whole community. And these are 8,000 square foot lots, and some of these are even larger. So we went back and we put less homes on that area. And again, we put 100-foot buffer that will remain natural. So this is what we'd like to do. This is what we're asking. And so this is a big thing for the community. So we took some extra time and we did a drone video for you. It's about a minute. And it's very important because remember, your land development code says that actual words are existing. 3.0304J says, you know, it deals with existing golf course views. But remember in 2007 and in 2008, the city changed it from a golf course to an MPD. So I think this is where we're having some discussions with staff and not able to get anywhere without you and city council's guidance as to what's reasonable is this issue, and particularly as it relates to here. So we're committed and we've done our engineering and we're ready to move forward to preserve probably 98% of the people's views in this area. So if we can go through this drone video and look, and can you stop at those appropriate areas so we can pause and look at the existing views of these residents. So here's a drone, fly. Oh, we'll come back to that, I'm sorry. Next. So let me come over on this side. Oh, you won't be able to see. So we start at, if you could pause, if we started at the north end and we're going to do a loop down the road and come back up. So does everybody kind of on the planning board understand where we're starting at on track 3? Okay. So we're going to fly down the neighborhood and see what we see. And knowing that we're dealing with their existing views. So you can see these homes. Where are they? They have a really great forest behind them. So their view is already, you know, obstructed or through the forest. We have 1, 2, 3 homes. Pause, please. Not quite working as best as we thought. All right, we'll just keep going. want you to notice this little area here. We'll get to that in a second. So these homes are already buffered. We have 3 homes here that have views of the natural area. This home has a 6-foot fence and forest. This house has forest. This area right here is all preserved and natural on track 3. And then we get to these residents, as you can see, buffered by forest. We have these homes here, buffered by forest. We have this house here, buffered by forest. This house here, buffered by forest. And we'll come back around and you can see it from the golf course view. Again, all buffered by forest. I'd propose to you that this is roughly anywhere from 60 to 50 to 60, maybe even 100 feet. So you can see those existing homes on track 3 and what their views are. You can see here we have incredible forest here. And then we come around to the southern end of track 3 and these people have forest too. And in fact, we'll come back around. So you can see these people and where the tree line is. And it's important that I ask you to remember this tree line because we're going to get to that in just a second. Notice this big tree slew. And then we get to these 3 houses, which we'll talk about in just a second. And then we have those houses here and the rest. So that's an aerial photo that you can see what the existing views of the area is, of these homes are. All but just a few have significant forest behind them. So in order to give some scale for the community to understand and for you all and city council to understand, we got a young person to do some magic. And this is the video they did overlaying the 100-foot vegetative buffer view shed protection zone that we are proposing in our plan. So if we can go through that, please. So keep in mind what this looks like. This will all remain natural, will never be touched. Will all be under a conservation easement. So these homes, they don't have anything to worry about. These 3 homes we can talk about in just a second. And everybody else's homes on that road and on that area of the property on track 3, their views will not be adversely affected and in fact will be preserved and enhanced as is required by staff. Again, the area in blue will all remain in its present condition and will continue to grow. And we're happy to work with an enhancement project also in this area. Also note to you all, if you go out there now, I mean, these were back in, I think, January. The fairways have grown up to roughly 6 feet now, I believe. So as time goes on, the forest will come back. We've seen that in some areas of town center and areas. So all this area here is going to remain the same. This will stay here. And all these trees in this zone are able to stay and in fact enhance and grow over time. So we know what their view is today, and we know what it'll be under our proposal. So can we go to the one before that? So under our plan, the concept as it relates to it, this is what it'll look like in plan view. No, the plan, I'm sorry. Yeah. So this is where we took out, it was 50 and 25 feet here. It was a double loaded road with homes, with the road going down and homes, smaller homes on it. So we went to these 12,000 square foot, it's about a 3,000 foot pad. This is an example of what it would look like. All this area in here, all this area, 100 feet from this property line, 160 feet from here, 300 from back in here, will all remain and go back to natural as it is doing today. And we will place an easement and conservation easement or whatever the city deems appropriate over that areas so that these people's existing views today and into the future will not be adversely affected. So that's what we're proposing on track 3. Okay. Track 4.
Hey, Michael, can you stop for a second?
Yes, sir.
Can we keep the comments down, let the man speak? You'll all get a chance to speak to the board under public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so this is track 4. Now, we need to enhance the stormwater of the area. Presently, track 3 that we know has stormwater that goes back to the rear of the lots on those people's property and down that drive and out to the front where there's a big ditch. As I said earlier, the law requires that all our stormwater stays on site and then it's discharged properly into a ditch. But we need stormwater on our site. So typically we would be able to put it in that 100-foot buffer like we did on track 1, but listening to the residents, they want it to remain the same. So this fairway here, track 4, old fairway here, you can see on the next slide that we're proposing to put just our stormwater there. So if you go to the next slide, and what we've talked about with staff is said, hey guys, they said to us, don't mess with the area, okay? Leave all the trees so we can go in and leave every single tree, maybe not every single, but I'll just say 98% of the trees in the fairway area, in this open area, and put our stormwater pond so that these people's views will not change. These people's views will not change, and we'll have stormwater not only for our project, but can work with the city to add additional stormwater drainage and protection for the area. The issues of lots on the corner, we're fine with. We agree with staff that we need to put buffers, those viewshed buffers on the adjacent side. So that's 4. The only difference really between us and 4 is that we are proposing to put this stormwater facility in here to enhance the area. And the same goes true with, track 5. People who live on track 5 will be happy. Nothing will happen. It'll go back to woods. We've talked to some of them about their ability to mow it and maintain it the way that they have been for the last 14 years since the golf course, or 12 years since the golf course closed. And so there's no development on that. Track 6 and 7. This was our plan originally, and this is when we were talking with city staff about adding drainage and stormwater for the region. They elected not to go there. And so we get it. And just like on track 4, we talked with staff last week, our plan would be this. Next one. Is to do the same thing. And in the existing open area, put the stormwater retention, leave all the trees that are there today, preserve everybody's views as they see them today, and in the middle, put a stormwater pond. And there may even be opportunities to create amenities for the communities around those ponds. And that's something that, you know, I guess we can't get with staff, and we need some guidance from you all and from city council. And track 7 is, we're fine with that. So that's 7. 8, we talked about. That's the parcel. The land development code requires that we have 100 feet from the area of any development. Right now, these people see the lake and there's trees around the back. We're fine with that. And we're fine with putting the 100-foot buffer up here, whether it's landscaped or berms and stuff, and then doing the townhouse product or the single family that is adjacent. One of the things I draw to your attention with this piece is right now, this piece is owned by Seagate, and they have a single family development. I don't know if it's preliminary plat's been issued yet or not. And this is a multifamily tract. So putting a medium density townhouse product, 35 feet in height, is a transition either way, or we're able to put single family homes there. So that's 8. And this is what it looks like from the aerial view. You can see, so most of the pond, it could be shaped a little bit, but most of this pond will stay because it needs for stormwater. And it's not adjacent to anybody except out in the front. So 9 and 10 are a difficult one. We've met with the residents, or not all the residents, but some. I forget the lady's name that had us at her house with her neighbors there. So forgive me, I apologize. She was very gracious and had lots of cakes and cookies for us. And Bob Dickinson and Alex and I sat and we went through there and we met with them. And this is what we wanted to propose, is that this buffer is a 60-foot buffer, 60 feet. It's going back to natural now. It's going to be a forest if we don't do anything. And maintain that as a forest so that their views will not be changed as to what they are today. And then do the PSP, I'm sorry, not the PSP, the, what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you, yes, institutional on that golf course area. So one of the things that's important is right about here is the main entrance to Sawmill Creek. There is a full justified intersection here. Will be, in 20 years significant because their 1,700 units will come out to US 1. And so we want to force whatever we have along US 1 here to face the road and provide the buffers to that existing neighborhood and maintain their views as they have them today and into the future. So, you can see we've gone through each track. I know it's a lot. We can talk about each track specifically, but what's most important here is that, we've addressed all the technical issues with your staff, and what you heard tonight from them is this issue of view protection zones and what we've done to address them over the last year or so, listening to the community, addressing their issues, making lots larger, creating buffers that preserve their views. We all understand that many of these people bought when there was an incredible golf course there, and that's gone, and it's going to go back to forest as it is today, as the city put out to the residents. And we're here to talk to you all. We've talked to dozens of people in the community to get us to this proposed plan. We're willing to talk some more, but we'd like you to approve our plan or some iteration of that. And so we're here to answer any questions that you may have of us. We have Bob, who is our planner. We have Matt, who's our traffic. Alex is the owner. And so if you want to start taking questions from staff to address some of these outstanding issues, we're here to answer them.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the applicant's presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back to the board. This is a chance for the board to ask questions of the applicant or the staff based on their presentation. Are there any questions for either? No.
Now? Okay. The retention ponds in the various tracks, the absence of them in the staff's recommendation, can you fill us in on the retention ponds, that are not in the staff recommendation? Can you give some detail around why that was opted in the staff recommendation not to be there in those tracks? I think 164.
If I heard a question, I think staff's, if we were reviewing it, we just, in our opinion, was just to keep it natural as is.
Any other questions from any of the board members?
Mr. Chair, if I could just comment on what Ray said, we believe, and I think your staff believes, that from a planning perspective, what they are proposing is their opinion. What we're proposing is our proposal, and neither are right or wrong. Neither of them are in violation of the comprehensive plan or the zoning categories. It's a matter of style as to whose ox is in the ditch. Some residents want 100-foot stormwater pond for waterfront property, or do they want a forest? They want the forest that will be there maintained in perpetuity as their buffer. So I would assert, and maybe Ray has a different opinion, that any iteration of this viewshed protection zone is within your purview and consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development.
All right. Any other questions from members of the board?
Hi, my name is Jim Albano. I have a question for the developer regarding the difference in views between track 3. There's a significant a difference of opinion on the use of track 3. So I'd like to hear maybe a little bit more of how you read the comprehensive plan in that area versus the staff's recommendation.
Yes, sir. Land Development Code required that the existing golf course views be maintained under a criteria. That's 3.0304J. Okay, and when the city realized that this was no longer a golf course and changed it to NPD, they incorporated some of this language, existing golf course views, but there's no golf course, as we know, as the city has declared. So, parsing words, there's no golf course view. Well, there is a view today Well, particularly back in January when we had mowed the fairways, or shortly thereafter they were mowed, was people had views that were 30, 40, 80 feet wide. But because of the issue that this property is going back to natural, and as it is today, there's 6 foot of growth of vegetation, plants and trees. Whether it's this month, Mr. Albano, or in 2024, this is going to be a forest. So when we go back to develop, when there's actual development, we'll need to preserve their views. And what we're proposing is we're willing to take a step forward and preserve those views in perpetuity at depths of 50, 100, 80, 90 feet, and not just the view that they would have at that time. So why staff elected to make their decision is up to them. We've made ours as we think it makes a really good community. And we think because it's preserved in perpetuity, whether it's forest or whether it's stormwater lakes, it adds value and enhances the community, both from a value, but also from a stormwater retention and flooding issue that is an issue up in that area. Hope that answered your question.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? I have 2. First one is for the applicant, Mr. Shimento. On track 3, you showed the lot layout there. I was a little concerned about driveways on Lakeview. I couldn't really tell from your layout if you had a driveway for every lot or if you were sharing driveways.
Yes, sir. We went over that with staff. There was the idea of putting the loop road in or shared driveway. So there would be on that plan, I think there's, was there 12, 14?
15 shared driveways.
On the Lakeview, and there's that large ditch there, so they would be culverted.
How many lots per driveway or whatever?
2.
Two
Okay.
lots. You have roughly 15?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And for staff, the existing zoning you showed is SFR2 and SFR3. Are any of the SFR zoned lots less than 80 feet?
Generally, staff has the 6 years I've worked there. When we look at the standards, we just look at the zoning district in the minimum. But so right, the SFR2 I think is a 60-foot wide minimum, and the SFR3 jumps to 80 feet, and the lots go to 10,000 square feet. I believe most of those lots are probably 10,000 square feet, or the 80, which I forget which you asked, but generally those lots exceed that. Sometimes developers like to have a smaller threshold because if they've got, let's say they got 790 feet in an area and the lot's got to be 80, they only get 9 lots. So in that case, they go with 79 feet lots and a 60 foot or 70 foot minimum so that you don't lose that one particular lot.
Right. I think what I was trying to get, and I think you answered it, was even though the zoning is SFR2, the lots as constructed really are more like SFR3, which is the 80 by 125 kind of standard Palm Coast lot.
I would agree with that statement.
All right. Thank you.
We would agree with that particularly on track 3 they are, and our lots on that lot are 12,000 square foot lots, not your 10,000.
All right. Any other questions from the board? All right. I promised the board a break around 7:30. Does anybody wish to do that? No, you want to keep going? All right, we're going to keep going. That brings us to public comment. I'm going to open the public comment section, but before I have a little bit of information, if you approach the podium and wish to speak, state your name and address clearly for the record. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. You cannot trade your time to someone else. The only exception to that would be if one of you is representing a large group, you can state so and the board can consider giving you extra time, but you have to state what group it is that you're representing for the record. Please be aware of the time limit. Wrap your comments up within the 3 minutes. There's a clock up there so you can get an idea of when you get close to that, try to wrap it up. Please be respectful of all speakers. Address the board. You're not talking to each other or the applicant or anyone else. You're addressing us. So please just talk to us. And staff is going to keep track of any questions that you may bring up, so that hopefully we will be able to get you an answer for those at the end of the public comment period. With that,
You can't see the clock that you're at the podium. The clock's facing the other way, facing you. You can't see.
okay, I will tell you when you hit 2 minutes and 30 seconds. How about that? All right, thank you.
We'll beep at 15 seconds and then it will beep again at the end of the time.
Okay, I'll do my best to, I can't see it very well either, to tell you when you hit 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Also, I need to state, if you're on the phone or trying to access by phone, that number again to call in is 386-223-1690. All right, thank you. First speaker.
My name is David Serdar, Brooklyn Park, Florida. I have to thank you by the Wisconsin State Golf Association. I grew up with PGA player David Over, second to state as a freshman. I got a picture by Arnold Palmer. I'm a concerned citizen that may be playing golf with Donald Trump in the near future. I was just quoted in the paper on this last one. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I just got the Flagler County pin, but I got the pins of Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer, Orange County Mayor Jerry Devins, and there's an Arnold Palmer golf course. He was the king. Friends of mine, well, a lot of citizens in the L section. I'm worried about the king's property. We got an Arnold Palmer golf course, Minnie Palmer, or hospital down in Orlando. We got Bay Hill. This is a championship signature Arnold Palmer golf course. I got a picture by Arnie. He signed hundreds of pictures. There's a first tee program you can have. This land is contaminated by the fertilizer. Up Penn State, agronomists can fix all that. These trees, the tees are still there. St. John's River Waterman's District, I may be appointed by the governor. He's cleaned out. I've publicly spoken to the last two of those. You know, I've got a picture here of my son with Tiger Woods. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, he's caddy for him. You know, kid, my dad taught me, I taught my son. I got a picture here, my son wins the district. I wasn't broke. I had to get my amateur status back. I've qualified in the Illinois, Wisconsin State Amateur, and I got to thank you by him. I got it here. I don't need to race it. I've got every bit of artillery. I worked with the governor's office to an extent. They listen to me, like Tibastrada, First Lady's aide, Brenda Burnett, External Affairs, and Governor DeSantis' staff does email me back, and they haven't stopped. I know every sheriff in the area. Wake County, Suffolk County, Marion County, Hernando, Citrus, Volusia, Orange, Flagler, got the cards to St. John's. Duval, I've public comment in many cities. This is ridiculous. What's your mayor doing? What are you guys doing? You know, they're looking for heroes out there. Golf. This is the king's course, a signature top 100. And you're going to redevelop this contaminated sand?
All right, you're at 30
And
seconds.
you may not have the rights to do so. You know, wars are fought with weapons. The election year is out. Mr. Lowe is a great candidate. I don't even see the mayor here. I see citizens. I see a lawyer. I grew up with lawyers. I grew up with judges. I grew up with my dad, a principal in the black neighborhoods of North Chicago. Loved my dad. Same school he went to as a child.
All right, sir, your 3
Thank you
minutes
for
is
your
up.
time.
Thank you.
God bless.
Mr.
Next
Chairman,
speaker.
I just want to make a reminder for everybody to wear their mask.
Yeah,
It's a
please.
Well,
requirement.
the lawyer didn't have his mask on.
I know you got excited. Don't worry about
The
it.
lawyer did not have his mask on.
Okay, all right.
Or
But
whoever it was before me.
please try to wear your mask if you
I
can.
did, I will, but he did not have his
All
on the
right,
whole
I
time.
got it. Thank you very much.
What's
Next,
the difference between me and him?
nothing. Next speaker, please. Go ahead. Just.
You know, I worked at a high school. Golf, game of a lifetime. Arnold Palmer Pro. I know Terry McMullen, Vale. Arnie signed my picture. I was in Arnie's army. I've been playing since I was 3 years old. My load is 64. You can't do that.
Let me say, there is no order, so we'll get to you as you come up. If you want to line up, just be respectful and try to stay like 10 feet apart, and we'll get to everybody. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Mike Martin. I live at 5 Lake Success Drive. I want to respond to something that Mr. Chiumento said when he talked about the testing for contamination of golf course. He talked about going down a half a foot and then 1 foot. In my personal research, I have found documents that show contaminated soil down to the depth of 3 feet, 2.5 and 3 feet. So I question whether that test was done effectively with the right depths, because with the sandy soil we have, arsenic can sink fairly down much further than a foot. I also questioned about the land code that talks about maintaining our existing golf course views. If this golf course stopped being a golf course, according to the city in 2007, then why were the owners forced to maintain it for the fairways? If it wasn't a golf course, why didn't the city allow it to go back and be feral in 2007? It talks about our existing golf course views. The existing views out there are not of feral forest. Behind my house on Lake Success, I can still clearly see the fairway. If you're talking about my existing view is still a well-maintained fairway. It's not a forest. So you have to ask yourselves exactly what is an existing golf course view and when does that view determine? If you determine it at when Mr. Ustilovsky put in his first rezoning plan, that was January. As you saw from the drone footage in January, those fairways look very neat and clean, not feral at all. So you need to ask yourselves exactly when you determine what the existing golf course view. It's going to be a lot different in 5 years than it was in January. So I ask you people to please consider all the possible effects of your decision. It's going to be a momentous decision. It could make some people a lot of money. It could affect some other people pretty badly. I ask you to consider the existing tenor of the neighborhood. We don't have small lots in our neighborhood. We don't want small lots in our neighborhood. One thing we are concerned about is the effect of new development on our values. That's not an unreasonable thing to expect. So I ask you to please consider all sides, consider all the arguments, and make the best possible choice. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Peter Kennedy. I live at 19 Lake Success Drive. Actually, Mike and I are neighbors. I've been in the Matanzas community for now almost 13 years. I'm a strong proponent and supporter of property rights, of owners' property rights. I speak for all of us in here about protecting our property rights, but also the property rights of the developer on the golf course. In a previous life, up in the Northeast, I served on my city's planning board. I also had the pleasure of serving 2 terms as an elected city councilman. During that time, I learned to trust that development that's properly zoned and correct for the area with the supervision, oversight, and assistance by the city is good development. And I trust from what I heard today from the city and also from the developer that I can see that there could be a very strong marriaging of the minds. Lastly, my concern, and I think a lot of us here share that, are property values and view shed. And it occurred to me when the city was showing their plans where they were restricting certain areas for houses, that if the developer wants to still maintain his 268 houses, he's going to be forced to shrink the size of those lots. And I don't see that as a positive for people's property value. And lastly, on the view shed, 50 feet is not enough. I, again, live on the 18th fairway. I saw Mr. Chiumento's presentation about track 1. And to me, it makes better sense for the development to include that elongated water body there on the 18th fairway, because that'll, number one, it will increase waterfront property. So the homes there, values will be protected and possibly increased, as well as the houses that are to be developed on the other side. And it also, in
30
my opinion,
seconds.
presents a better buffer for the people that live in that area. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing the city and the developer work together to get all these issues done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, next speaker.
Hello, David Flynn. I live at 47 Londonderry, track 8. I don't know if you guys can bring it up. I had a few questions about it. When you do that. I'm actually speaking for about 4 out of the 5 residents that live on Londonderry that face the pond there.
No, go back to the other one.
Yeah, dotted line express our property here. That line represents what exactly? From our property to there. So obviously, around 8 to 10 feet behind our property line is the golf course, and the golf course goes from our property line about 30 feet, maybe 40 feet to the pond. And that, over 20 years I've lived there, we had an agreement with the golf course back in the day that we were allowed to maintain, upkeep, and take care of that property, which we all do quite well. We built irrigation systems, fences, gardens. It's well maintained. It looks very good. And we were concerned if there was any particular plans for that portion there, what would happen to that piece. Any fencing, or you guys even try and do anything there? Because that would obviously obstruct the view, but I wasn't sure if there's anything that we don't see here that.
We'll try to get you.
As well as, you got the spots for the lots of all the other properties, but where would those townhouses be along this section here or across? You know, is there nothing set in stone there yet?
Yeah, please, again, address the board, and you can ask your questions, and we'll get an answer for you.
Okay. What do you say about that? You guys don't even know.
We're going to do that after public comment, so.
Okay, so, yeah, that's all I got. So that line to Londonderry is protected, right? All right, beautiful.
Next speaker.
Hi, can you bring up track 9, please? Yes, my name is Mark Ransom. I've lived in Palm Coast for 4 years. I live at 141 London Drive. My concern is with both the staff, I want to thank Mr. Chimento and the staff for their presentations, is that there's retention ponds right here in this area. And many animals, they use that. Plus, it's vital for that area it's vital for the runoff on water. We posted a bunch of pictures of how much water and had unseasonable rain.
Can you try to speak into the mic, because we have to pick you up on the record too. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to show you. But anyhow, what my concern is those retention ponds are vital to this area there, because not only do they have the turtles and all kinds of other wildlife there, but the deal is, the reason why I moved here was because I've looked at all the parks, the walking. I mean, this is, this track right here, and I asked the one gentleman, the institutional, it'd be perfect for a park, and I understand that I believe is an institutional, but the deal is, with all these houses, there's really no area for the people to have recreation. And so the deal is both the staff and the developer are completely discounting those 2 big ponds there. And I invite anybody to come over to my house tomorrow, and I'll show you. And I really appreciate the time that you guys are taking, because this is very important to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, next speaker.
Okay.
Here we go. Hello, board members. My name is Susan Shiverdecker. I live on Fairway 4 of Matanza Woods Golf Course. The developer on his map calls this track 9. I have many concerns which I will not be able to discuss here right now in 3 minutes. Institutional at the tee-off area of Fairway to be built on. Has it been tested for many types of chemicals that most likely are due to be on this part of the track? If this is the case, what has developer proposed for soil removal? Is the ingress egress off of London or US 1? At 341 feet from my property line to US 1, there are ponds going to be filled in to accommodate these units on track 9, which are not being shown on track 9 on this map. The land slope, okay, 35 feet waterway is not large enough to accommodate for these 1 unit per acre properties and the institutional that is proposed. The land slope grade works behind my property. Now, if this is allowed at 35 feet away from my home, this might possibly put me into a flood zone. By FEMA map, my home is in flood X. If this development puts into a flood zone, I could possibly be A, EA, or V. I will need flood insurance at $500 a year. Have you thought of a better plan for drainage than 35 extra accommodating for these people on track 9? The sidewalks and walkways I have read in your documents of 268 pages on track 9. Are these going to be where the original cart paths are or a new created pathway? Has the soil been tested on these various areas of this track where you may possibly excavate the sidewalks? Where is the ingress and the egress for these pathways on track 9? Are pathways going to be kept on opposite side of the pond of the fairway from existing homes? Section 16, common areas and maintenance in your proposal. Lakeview Estates already has an HOA, and it is set up to maintain that area of
30 seconds.
development. It shows us application 4150. Its wording is a whole development of the golf course. Therefore, it can have a POA. Do you understand what a POA is, people? I'm not finished with it.
You had 12 seconds.
Okay. I didn't think I did. A POA is a property owners association, which basically means you as neighborhood will be paying to maintain his stuff. Okay, by the 2/3 vote.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, next speaker.
I'm Toby Tobin. I'm a resident of Palm Coast. And full disclosure, I do consult with this developer. I'm here as a citizen, though. I do consult with this developer as well as others. But what I'm about to say is consistent
Toby,
with my writings and comments.
Can you
over
speak
the
up a little
past
bit?
15
We're
years.
having trouble hearing you.
Oh, louder. Gee.
Louder.
No. Toby.
Okay, I consult to this developer as well as others, but what I'm about to say is consistent with my writings and comments over the past 15 years. The agenda makes it clear that the LDC does not quantify the depth or the thickness of view protected zones. It further states, quote, "It is clear that new development does not need to be completely out of the view or may be visible from existing properties," unquote. Regarding tract 1, 7 homes on
You are the
south-
only participant in this conference. Press any key to continue this conference.
Extra minutes, please.
Not sure
7
what that
homes on the south end of Lake Success Drive overlook the former 18th hole to the west. Beyond the 18th hole is a wooded area approximately 100 feet deep. Further west is the former 19th hole, then Lakeview Boulevard. The total depth of the staff recommended zone, view protected zone, extends all the way to Lakeview Boulevard between 460 and 650 feet from the homes. This determination denies development of approximately 900 feet of Lakeview Boulevard frontage. Regarding track 3, all but a few homes backing to the former 8th and 10th holes do not have a quote golf course view unquote. They have a view of trees. Beyond leaving the trees, there's no view to protect. The response from opponents has been well organized and forceful. However, their dialogue has.
You are the only participant in this conference. Press any key to continue this conference.
Their dialogue has failed to invite discussion about 3 neighborhood issues that could be mitigated because of this proposed development. 1, the lack of public park in the area, previously mentioned. 2, drainage issues in the community. 3, possible access to US 1 from London Drive.
The conference will now continue.
Opponents appear to be focused on making development impossible rather than seizing the opportunity to negotiate on behalf of these important issues. Staff's narrow interpretation of view protective zones seems to indicate a likewise disregard for the potential solutions to these neighborhood problems. A public park, improved drainage, and direct access to US 1 will increase property values in the neighborhood. The agenda language clearly admits that there is room for interpretation. Where there is room for interpretation, there is room for negotiation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sorry for those interruptions. All right, next speaker.
Hello, my name is Frank Malinowski from 16 Lee Drive. We also own 3 lots that are adjacent to what would be parcel number 3. I'd like to thank the staff, the applicant, and all the residents for being professional and civil. And I'm thanking God that there is actually a process in our county, in our city, and in our country, where in many other places around the world, we wouldn't even be having discussions. I think a lot of concerns and some clarity would be brought if you could maybe address later on or explain these 2 points I want to ask about. Number 1, if looking at the different sections that are part of this plan, if the 268 homes proceed in being built on these MPD sections, just want to find out if basically that closes the door on these lands for any future additional homes, or will we be revisiting, hey, maybe some of this conservation area or some of these other plots of land that now we would be agreeing to leave alone, can somebody come back and some months or years from now say, hey, let's put up another 268 homes? I think that will help alleviate or answer some of these concerns. Also, I think a key question to consider from both sides, and I see merit to the city's proposals in reference to track number 1 and 3, as well as the applicants. I think what will help us be more comfortable with either way is if, for example, track number 3 is not going to have anything built and track number 1 is reduced in size, as the city suggests, basically, how will these lots that are going to be the 268 lots be impacted? In other words, are we going to have 5,000 square foot lots in that area instead of 7,000 square foot lots? So I would like to find out, according to the applicant's proposal, what will be the size of the lots in section 1 if track number 3 will proceed as they suggest, which seems like they're going to be at least 10,000 square foot lots. And I think that will alleviate some of the concern because both sides have an upside and a downside. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Leanne Pennington, 75 Lake Success Drive. And I just, for the city staff, you know me well and don't respond, but that's okay. I know it's been a big journey for us. When we started at the developers meeting in December, it was drastically different. I was getting city water behind my home and our neighborhood was like, yay, we're getting city maintained water. And now I am currently, the map today for both sides shows conservation. And that seems like good news, except when I review those maps and I look at the actual verbiage in the plan that's going to be signed by our city council, it makes no mention of the word conservation. And the city has not counseled, at least today that I can see, for him to add that word conservation into the tracks, mine specifically track 2. Currently, the verbiage actually states, this property is limited to single-family residential dwelling, view protection zone, natural buffers, and stormwater ponds. It makes no mention of conservation. I would love to know what's going in my backyard and whether or not it would be in perpetuity. I do want to thank the city specifically for working with us. In the beginning, it did not look like this, and it does appear that they are going to stick to the land development code and respect our rights. And they're not just our rights, but they're the rights of the existing golf courses such as Cypress Knolls, Pine Lakes, and Palm Harbor. I do have an issue though, because the land code says multifamily use shall be surrounded by a fairway, not on them. And yet the city's recommending building multifamily directly upon one. I've actually brought the original map from St. John's Water Management District today to show you that. We're truly living in the spirit of this development code. You have to say no to the multifamily on track 8. Approving this today will set a precedent for Cypress Knolls, Pine Lakes, you guys know it, Palm Harbor. Proving this, and you're just going to set the precedent that these fairways can be developed. You have to say no to development on the fairways to protect all the courses and surrounding neighborhoods. And I urge the city to go back and look at the development code if that's their intentions, to start developing golf courses. If I just have a minute, I did ask the city for the soil testing. Just a couple weeks ago, I asked the clerk. I was told there was none. So I'd like to be provided with the soil testing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, I'm Michael Arnold, registered representative, Next Financial. I also live at 14 Louvet Lane. A lot of individuals are mentioning in relation to the insurance costs and the adjustments accordingly, as well as an increase in flood zone. The diversion ditches are being removed. I am actually recommending, and I'm actually requesting that an economic impact analysis be performed by a certified financial professional or certified financial institution, so that individuals can be rest assured, not just by your interpretation of what this means, as far as adding additional lots and so on and so forth. An economic impact analysis should also show the impact on the water system, as well as the impact on property values, and as far as the impact on our school districts. My daughter does attend a school district here, and making sure that the levels are maintained accordingly in the classroom. I am requesting for an economic analysis be performed by a certified financial institution. As far as an impact also on insurance costs, that should also be accompanied by I'm going to use a property and casualty corporation institution to make sure that individuals are also assured that this will not have an impact on their flood zones, increasing their cost of living. Because as we know, if a cost of living is adjusted, then an individual should be compensated accordingly. I also have another question in regards to whether the purchaser has been qualified for proof of funds, as well as a legal opinion be provided so that the individual can be qualified as an investor, because this is an investment under everything standard as a real estate investment. So a qualified legal opinion stating that the individual is able to meet the guidelines, has not been backed up in arrears, has no pending litigation against them, has nothing where their current tenants have not filed the formal complaints or anything like that. And as far as the proof of funding should also show that the individual has up to an estimated, and as a private banker, an investment banker, 120% in order to make sure that they can meet the deadlines. If this is in fact a holder in due course situation where the individual has the intention on selling the land, then the person that he has the intentions on selling the land to should also be qualified with a legal opinion, as well as
All right, 30 seconds.
As well as the funding should also be certified as well. So everybody here all has the concerns about their economic impact on their property, get one certified.
Thank you very much. All right, next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Luis Medeiros. I also work with Alex on his developments. And knowing Alex, as you could see from his development here, from what it originally was to what it is now. Alex takes a lot of time and effort to address all the concerns. He's very conscious. I've been working with him for about 2 years. Takes everybody into consideration. He tries to work really hard to address all the issues that everyone has and makes the greatest effort to change everything to make everyone as, happy as he possibly can. He's a great guy to work with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there another speaker?
I am Perry Matrano, 207 London Drive. I'd like to thank the city for everything you all have done, and the applicant for working hard. Schmento doing a good job there. But when we lived and moved down here, we loved that golf course, and we keep hearing that it's not a golf course. Well, there is a document out there from ITT that's floating around. It doesn't seem to be around anymore, or maybe it is, and it's being ignored. It says that the golf course is supposed to be maintained, the golf course in perpetuity. So I don't know what happened to that document. Now, I spent the last 10 years of my life in a municipality as a director, and I watched the commissioners change their mind and change local development code and do whatever it is they do. And at the end of the day, the only person that ever suffers is the person that makes that investment. I'm homesteaded in my home. That's my investment. It's like your investment. The difference between yours and mine is yours is risk and mine isn't. So I ask that you all on the board think about carefully, as one other person that got up here to say, that if you change this golf course from what it was, you've now opened the door for every other golf course in this community to be completely annihilated and wiped out by an investor who has plenty of capital to do so. Now, as far as capital is concerned, I don't know Mr. Alex's funds, what he has, doesn't have, but at the end of the day, one thing I do worry about is that the project gets started and then it stalls. COVID, recession, elections, God knows what's going to happen. So the key is, if this project was to get started, we don't want to have, like we had at the Canterbury, where all the sticks went up and 5 homes sat there for years. We don't want that on this project. So I ask you to table it. Think about this and get these questions answered. And find that document from ITT that says in perpetuity. That's what it says, folks. It's there. If you want to know where it is, we'll try to resend it to you. You already got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Dennis Schibbedecker, live at 145 London. Got a quick question for you. I just paid my property tax. My property tax indicated I live on the golf course, which is the auditor is a government entity. So my question is, your government says I live on the government, lives on the government on the golf course. My question is, which is right? You're saying it's now not a golf course, but my property bill says it is. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you bring up track 1? My name is Diana Minotti. I live at 207 London Drive. We bought the land, built our home in 2005. Been a resident here for over 15 years. It's unfortunate that Matanzas Woods has always been considered, nobody's interested. Nobody's been interested in Matanzas Woods until right now. We have no playground. We got one walkway, and that was only because a girl was killed. That we have a walkway, a sidewalk, and some light. We still don't have a subdivision sign. We haven't had a sign up in years. The golf course is a very sad situation. We've asked it to be maintained for over, how long it's been closed, 2007. So here we are again. I'm sure that this is something that the city would like to just write off and be done with, because you're tired of the complaints, tired of the flooding issues, you're tired of hearing us complain about the mowing issues. But if this development does take place, as far as fire mitigation, if it's going to be back to a forest, is the fire department going to be involved in the forestry that it's going to be? Will it get cleaned up prior or ever be maintained? Because I owned 50-something acres in New York and I had a forestry plan. You have to maintain them, even if it's forest, it does need to be somewhat maintained. So that's a major consideration. On track one, my question is, you mentioned that there was arsenic found. Where was the arsenic found on track one? Where is it that the building, where the driving range is? Because isn't that where they're talking about putting quite a bit of houses? I mean, you're gonna dig up all that land. We're wearing masks right now. And we're stuck wearing masks for 6 months, maybe a year. Are we gonna have to wear masks for the next 5 years of development? Because it's all going to be ripped up and into the air. So that's really a consideration is, I know we've talked a lot about line of sight and worried about what it's going to look like, but what good is it and what it looks like if we're gonna be dead? So I would really like to
30
have
seconds.
these health issues seriously considered. And if it is going to be back to its natural state, is the fire department or the forestry department, anyone going to be involved in the protection of that for the rest of us who do reside there? There was 1,000 people that signed a petition that do not want to see this happen. And my husband brought up the bit about Canterbury Woods.
All right, can
3
we wrap it up,
streets,
please?
3 entire blocks were decimated and lived that way for years and years and years, and they were only just completed in the last 2 years. So it was a sin to have to look at devastation and nothing being done. So is a bond going to be, does the developer get
All right.
vetted, and will there be a bond to ensure us that if you're going to
Okay.
go ahead with something?
Ms. Minotti, can you wrap it up? Thank you. Thank you so much. Could I ask how many more people wish to speak? Because I got a note that we need a bathroom break. No, that's fine. Just one? Is that 2? About any more than that? 3? You want to keep going or have a break? Okay, keep going or have a break. Break. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess for a bathroom break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
I know, right?
I don't want this. I want the golf course. You guys only paid $300,000.
All right, we're going to reconvene. Everybody, please be seated.
Hi, Al. All right, you ready? Sir, you know. Check it. Sir, oh, we did.
All right, everybody, if everybody would please take their seat, we can get started again. All right, we're going to reconvene. I want to remind everybody again, if you're listening online, the call in is 386-223-1690. Do we have another speaker? Go ahead, please.
My name is Celia Puglisi, and I don't live in this current golf course, but I live in this golf course right here, 1.5 blocks from us. My question is this. We come to Florida. I arrived here in 1991, and we buy in golf courses. And I have a great friend of mine that they bought in the Matanzas golf course. Some of them bought double lots. They built Howell homes, the best that they were at that time. And then the golf course was not financially well. It was closed, has been going through rezonings. I mean, is that we don't have any rights when we buy in a golf course in Florida? Are we important as investors? These golf courses are not financially well, and then they are sold, and they become something else. They rezone, and then they allow multifamilies and all kinds of type of homes built there, and affects the quality of life of those original buyers like myself, that we have spent much more in our properties because we were thinking that we bought on a golf course. This is grossly unfair to us coming to Florida. And that should not be the way for us. If a golf course is no longer financially well, and there is no any other exit out there for other than selling the land, that should be preserved as green acres. And this should be for care for all those owners that own adjacent to those golf courses, that they bought for the view, for the amenity. They lose the amenity, but at least they keep the view. And we do have in Florida, the Florida Forever Preservation Lands, which we all collaborate with taxes. We all fund those, the Florida Forever. And we can maybe apply for money to buy out when a golf course, we keep it in the hands of the city. They sold this golf course before for $300,000 when Mr. Nets was the mayor, and we should have bought it then. And we should have bought it now because this is still, the land was for $600,000, I believe. It's a gift. We should have kept this for green acres, for our city, for all those owners that live around and bought in a golf course. And thank you for letting me speak. If my time is over, I can see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bravo.
Next speaker.
City should buy.
Hello, my name's Robert King. I'm firmly against this development. I just want to put that up front for various reasons. I'd like to read a little snippet from the mission statement of the LDC. The LDC sets forth regulations, requirements, and procedures governing the use and the development of land, and for the purpose of protecting the health, safety, and the general welfare of the citizens of the city. This development is not going to do any favors for anybody in this neighborhood. Besides the arsenic, that was very disturbing hearing about that today. And Toby Tobin also brought up the fact that recreation, healthy lifestyle, and well-being is being overlooked. We need to think about parks and recreation. And this golf course was put here for a purpose by ITT. And what's different now? We're getting more population, land is going away, and it's more needed now than it's ever needed before. We need healthy lifestyle recreation. A golf course, it can be a preserve park, it can be anything. It can't be what this man wants it to be for his profit. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I was very blunt, but that's how I think.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Michael Blvd. I just have 2 points because all my other points were already said. Alex and Mr. Tremonti, or whatever his name is, they're proposing on their deal that they want to do more retention ponds. All I know about Alex is he has another property he's developing on American Village, and he has a retention pond there that has failed code and is classified as a hazard to life. And you want to let him touch these. And if I'm wrong, Mr. Tyner, say something. Thank you. The next point is view protection zones, which is a very creative statement, okay? View protection. You buy your house on a golf course and you say, I have a view protection zone of a golf course. It's actually a line of sight, right? I bought, invested, paid a premium, knowing there's no housing behind me. I'm willing to pay extra. Now, if the golf course folds, doesn't mean, and the greens go away and trees come up, doesn't mean my line of sight or my entitlement is gone. It's still there. I bought that nothing would be built behind me. And it should be that way. You're pretty close to it, but you're still allowing building on the fairways with the multifamily. Alex's plan is totally out of the park, but if you confined it up by track 1, got rid of the arsenic issue, it may be feasible. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Justin Simmons. I live at 39 Lake Success Drive. I consider myself lucky to be one of the youngest homeowners in the area. It's a very good community. Just before I start, these pictures you see in this room don't have any homes in them. They're the reason my Florida is beautiful. That's what Flagler County is ruled. The views that I saw tonight, including what the board has done versus what the applicant plan is, it will be very different. I feel like the board plan listens to the community, the arguments, if you will, the correspondence from previous times it's all been met about. It felt like a good plan. I could lean towards that. But what I'm not a lawyer, so when I was reading through the code, you mentioned multiple times 3.0304J. I'm looking through it. It was drafted in 2008. While the golf course is closed, you all did very wisely put in the golf course community verbiage in there to protect that, because you knew what the man before me had stated that he did buy to have a golf course the distance behind him. That essence of not being houses directly behind you. Paid that premium, a premium that's never been paid back. While the homeowners have lost those values over the years. That's a moot point now. But it still does say that a golf course view. I agree, it's not a golf course, but the verbiage is a golf course view. So I don't have a golf course to play golf course on, but the verbiage of the wording says I should have a golf course view. Now, I don't know if you know how big a golf course is. It doesn't fit in 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 feet. While I'm not against the development in total, it's not my land, I didn't buy it. It's no longer a golf course, those are facts. A golf course view is more than what a lot of those views on the applicant's proposal said. I felt like from the board was a meeting in the middle between having no development and the applicants, and I would feel more comfortable if that went toward the city council and that's what they voted on. My concern leaving here tonight is that those are going to go to the city council And we have no idea if the city council gets to do whatever they want. We're not speaking to them tonight, we're speaking to the board and the applicant. So where do we go from there? But it does say a golf course for you. Thank you for all being here tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any more speakers? Yeah, I'll ask again, are there any more speakers? Seeing none, we're going to open it up to any online participants. Do we have any? Okay, would you unmute them? All right, if you're on,
Hello?
go ahead.
Yes, my name is Linda Little, and I live on Londonderry Drive. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I live on Londonderry Drive, and I was recently told by someone that the developer said that no one is allowed to mow on their land, on his land anymore. I live on Londonderry where the lake is behind, right directly behind my house on track 8. And we always mow the grass, not just in our lot, but we have a vacant lot next to us that belongs to someone else. And we always keep that mowed too. Because I have had 7 water moccasins in 18 months in my yard next to my house, right up against my screen, and 1 in my pool. Since living here and well, in the past 18 months. And I'm very concerned about if he's not going to allow us to mow our grass behind the house. At one point, Mr. Cimento, at one of the meetings, when I brought this up, he said, oh, well, that's such a small piece of property that we might even just give that to you guys between the houses there and the lake. And I would like for them to address if it's true that we're not going to be allowed to mow or what they intend to do behind our house.
All right, we will try to get an answer for you. Any other comments?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'll ask one last time, are there any more public comments of people who have not spoken before? No, can't. Sorry. You're only allowed to speak once. So anybody who has not spoken wants to speak, this is your last chance. Please. This is your last chance. Any other speakers? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and come back to the board. What is the board's pleasure? Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to try to answer some questions. Ray, who's been tracking the questions?
I've been,
I think I've wrote a bunch of questions down. I think the applicant has too, but I will go through what I have. Just bear with me to go through and try to answer some of those questions I think are more geared toward staff. And then Mr. Cimento I'm sure they wrote some questions down that are geared more towards them. So just bear with me. One of the questions was about the arsenic test. The city has not received that test. I know the applicant has informed us that they have conducted the testing, but I will say that within the development agreement, we have language that we specifically put in, especially on, if y'all look at page 36, we have language in 11.20 titled pollutants, and it states that prior to issuance of any development permit, for future, if they're going to go for a site plan or a plat, they need to provide that information to the city of Palm Coast when it comes to the environmental testing. Also let's see here, applicant. Again, there was another question on chemicals and where that's located. Mr. Cimento could show that later. Flood zone, there were some questions on that, that, impacts from this development may cause adjacent properties to go into another flood zone. The city of Palm Coast has a stringent floodplain regulations that, in fact, it's a little bit opposite that we require that any residential homes be out of the floodplain. And part of those regulations is that they cannot impact or increase any of the flood on adjoining properties.
And you will review that during the development review process.
Absolutely. And maybe I'll get into that this is kind of more of a 30,000 foot level. If this project is getting approved, the technical aspects of that with of our review staff, that's when you get into all the technical experts, our engineers, our water and our sewer reviewers, the environmental assessments. Yeah, they did a preliminary environmental assessment here, but when the next step comes in, if this is approved during like a site plan or a preliminary plat application, they're going to be required to provide all that information. And our technical staff, we have our biologists, our professional staff, our stormwater expert, our stormwater engineer, our floodplain manager, our civil engineer. All these professionals are looking into these plans to make sure that they comply with our land development code. There's with some questions on stormwater. There's two things that I heard with some of the questions or maybe some of the comments is that number one, is there, it sounds like, there's some issues with stormwater. And I will tell you that that's not the applicant issue, that there may be a city issue. And I could tell you that the city has hired, an engineer and a consultant to look at improving the area in the stormwater in Matanzas Lake. On the second side of the equation is that if the developer comes in for their plan, it's not only the city approving that, but it's the St. Johns River Water Management District as well to make sure they comply with the state guidelines and state standards. And generally, what the requirements are is that, what's natural now of a drop of water going off, they cannot go into and have a negative impact on the existing residents in existing areas. So that is definitely a stringent requirement that is modeling, it's testing, and need to need to be in concurrent not only with the city but with the St. Johns River Water Management District as well. The economic analysis, Mr. Schimento will cover that one, but part of that was the gentleman said, is there a water and sewer analysis required? Absolutely. Every time that an application comes in and they're going to develop single family homes or any project in the city of Palm Coast, there has to be a specific utility agreement with our utility department for both water and sewer to make sure that the capacity is there, to make sure that there's not going to be any negative impacts. It's going to follow the city regulations as well as the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They require permits for, like the sewer and water as well. So it's just not the city looking at it, but also other agencies as well. The property tax issue, property tax, it says golf course. That is the property appraiser on how they assess property. Obviously, it's not a golf course. It hasn't been a golf course since I think it was 07. Basically we follow the city of Palm Coast. We follow our zoning codes. And as Mr. Hoover said in his presentation during my introduction, this property was zoned R1B, which allowed up to 3 units per acre even before we became a city. And when we became a city, we did our first comprehensive plan that lessened those entitlements from 3 units an acre to 1 unit per acre. And we added the golf course language within that code. And as the gentleman expressed that, it says golf course. Yes, it does, because it was written before the golf course went away. And I could tell you that city staff has taken the interpretation of that language that the intent was the open space, because, some could take an argument that it's irrelevant today, but we're not taking that viewpoint. We are taking it that the golf course language in there and the intent of it is to protect the existing neighborhoods and as much as practical. And as we said in our presentation, when it comes to that language, It is not real clear. And we expressed that in our presentation. We expressed that to the planning board in our staff report that, it would be, it doesn't say 200 or 300 feet. It says peripheral views. It clearly says that it's not out of sight, out of mind on that. And that's what's been very difficult working for the last 9-10 months with the applicant to come up with, what does this mean? Because it's not real clear. And that's why, we have some differences. So I think, let me look here.
I've got a couple that maybe you can answer. The first one was, one of the speakers asked if this is approved, no matter what level it is, right now it's 268 homes. How do we know that that doesn't change in the future?
That is a great question. And, you can never say never, that nothing could change. But I will tell you, the language that we have in the development agreement, and it is a zoning document. And if that were to change, they would have to go through the process again, to go through the public hearing process to modify this development agreement, which would include going back to a public hearing with the planning board, to city council meetings as well, to review that. And also too, that we have language in the development agreement that for these view protection zones to make them, conservation, to do that via plat. So there's another mechanism to make those conservation easements. That makes it even harder to take those away. So that is another layer of protection.
All right, that was actually my next one, was how do they know that the protection or the view protection zone would be protected and wouldn't be changed?
Well, because on page 34 of our development agreement, and specifically it is section 11.7 view protection zones, you can see in number 2 that the owner must record conservation easements over the view protection zone areas. So it specifically states in this development agreement that they will record conservation easements over those protection zones.
Would that easement be in favor of the city of Palm Coast? So
We haven't,
have those rights?
yeah, we most likely would, once we go through in that mechanism, this document, we would have to comply with that. Like if they came in for the platting process and the final plat, we would create some language and work with our city attorney to make sure that that language is acceptable to the city.
All right, and the last one I have for you is one of the speakers talked about the retention ponds that in another development, maybe by the same developer, they were not working up to what they think they should. So just maybe state what the city staff will review. Not only city staff, but the Water Management District also reviews that to ensure that they will work.
Yeah, and I'm not real positive sure. I know that, and it's not related to this project, but, sometimes you do have some technical difficulties of doing a pond. I think one instant is the water level of the pond, I think, was not exactly coming up. I think it's high now. Sometimes it depends on, I'm not an engineer, but it does depend on what the lithology, what the geology is of the certain area. You may have like a clay layer underneath, could be perched water table, where it's hard for that water to, get up high. And I believe now it has, but, my point is too that, it's not only the city looking at it, but you got 2 reviewing agencies, the St. John's River Water Management District, that really regulates stormwater as well.
All right, anything else? Those are the ones I had for staff.
Del Renzo, you have any ones that I'm missing maybe? Anybody that aren't going to go to the applicant? Do you remember anyone?
I got starred here.
Yeah. One question that I missed was, why is the golf course not being maintained now when the other owner was required to maintain the golf course, the old golf course fairways. That was a code enforcement, went through code enforcement. Basically, make a long story short with that is that, you know, a CO was still in place for a use that was associated with a golf course. So they were required to take down the clubhouse, take down the, I guess, the bathrooms on the golf course. So there is no active CO, so to speak, where now, you know, how the city looks at this is that it goes back to nature. That's kind of, hopefully I answered that.
I don't know if you want to touch on then on multifamily on the fairway.
All right, Mr. Schminto. I don't know if you want to go through your list or you want me to hit the ones that I wrote down.
Why don't you please, sir?
Want me to go ahead?
Me?
Well, let me just ask the ones I got.
Okay.
I'm trying to write down in a hurry. The first was contamination. I think you had said you did a study down to 2 feet. One of the speakers suggested that maybe it'd be 3. And as Mr. Tyner just said, one of the requirements in the MPD is that you, I guess, prove that you do not have any hazardous chemicals. So how would you expect to address that before you go through development review?
Yes, sir. Track 1. These issues are both Florida statute and federal statutes. How you...
Could you please put the mask back on? We all have words when we spoke. Thank you.
So they are, how you do this testing is mandated by the state and federal government. So they tell you how to do it. So when someone is a certified insurer, they have to follow those rules. Reports have to be approved. So the reports are done, and the study was done according to the state and federal rules. As I said earlier, it's not significant, but roughly about where the one is, track 1, the old driving range. And there is some additional levels that have to be remediated. And even how you remediate, it's a very small area, probably about 100 yards in area, that have to be remediated. And they dictate how you remediate and how you remove from site, off site, and then how you put it back together. So that's all we have right now. But obviously, before you can disturb any ground, you have to get approvals not only from the state, federal, and city governments that you've done it properly. Okay.
All right, thank you. And the next thing I wrote down, I didn't get to write it all, but it concerned the buffers on tract 8.
Okay. Tract 8, yes, there was a couple questions about tract 8. Tract 8. Tract 8 is for multifamily, but it is limited to the 35-foot townhouse property. So in your land development code, it says you have to have 150 feet here and 150 feet from the top. This would be about 100 feet. So that buffer is there as it is adjacent to these vacant land. The code just says you need to follow the land development code setback. There were residents that lived in this area, Lord, that if you were going to play golf there was golf course area basically between their property line and the top of that. And historically, they have maintained that through agreements with prior owners, and we're still committed to that they can maintain our access. So we have no problem with these residents not being impacted at all. In fact, this lake, if they live with it, all kinds of trees are going to stay and see back here, and we're fine with it. Even at the end.
That's not a fairway?
Haven't gotten there yet. So this is, these residents here we're talking about maintaining that bank, right? And so we're fine with maintaining that condition of the use of. The other one was the question that was just yelled out about the fairway. So, you know, was a golf course. The code talks about golf course use, and you have golf course language in there. How the city council interprets that, I don't know. We in city staff have said that the proposal is consistent with the land development code, and that's how we have to implement.
And that's how we'll answer that question. So is it a fairway? No, it's not a fairway, but yes, in the code, it does make reference to terms of art that are associated with golf as fairway and golf views and those types of things. So that's the only answer I have to that specific question, sir.
All right. The next thing that I have was both of these refer to track 9. So if you want to bring track 9 up there. The first was ingress and egress. Was it just going to be on US 1?
Yes, ingress and egress will be limited to US 1. There will be no access to the interior residential community.
Okay, and then the second question, or speaker asked about the existing retention ponds that are on the old fairway on track 9. What would happen with those?
Okay, what we have proposed with staff in the past is presently that stormwater system is not a quote conveyance system. It was just there to accommodate the runoff and for part of the golf course beautification. So the ponds don't necessarily drain anywhere and accommodate runoff from the community. What we had proposed to staff is that in this buffer, we would create and establish a stormwater zone for these residents so that they would have waterfront also. What would happen presently, because there is no flow through those ponds, is that because it's going back to natural state, they'll begin to silt in and they'll go back to their natural condition. So that is an issue that needs to be addressed by us and the city. But you know, the way it works right now is under this proposal, it would just go back to trees. And you know, I think our engineers would tell you, and your engineering background, sir, is that it would begin to silt in and those ponds would not be functional anymore. Our belief is that this needs to be looked at as a global solution on how we get stormwater from up in that area to come down into the existing lakes and ponds. But that's what our proposal puts forth, not city staff's.
Thank you. One of the speakers mentioned the Property Owners Association. I think you mentioned it in your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Maybe there's a misunderstanding of who would be in that and who pays.
Yes.
And also what they would do. Would they maintain the view protection zones?
So, Property Owners Association, tracks 1 and 3 would be part of either their own independent or maybe a global master association. Only those lots would be subject to the association. We do not have the ability to impose any association dues or governance over the existing lot owners that are in between. So that was not accurate, that the entire community would be subject to a POA. Only the 2 little communities that we would be developing would be subject to their own POA that would maintain their roads, their stormwater, and the like. So that was not accurate that the entire community would be subject to a POA. Yes, and the townhouse, tract 8 would also be a POA. I don't mind.
Well, you really, let me just ask if it's all right with the board. She asked you a question. Anybody have an objection to just a question? All right, if you make it really brief.
Well, we had, the question, if I can, was what would happen in this view protection area, whether it would be trees or a water body that would help drainage and convey water from the north down to the south. We're open to address that. We can put that in the view shed protection. It would always be under a conservation easement, and it can be a combination of I don't want to say a river, that's a little dramatic, but retention and stormwater conveyance and trees. I mean, remember that this whole area will go back, if nothing's done, will go back to woods, and those ponds, because they're not part of a master stormwater system, will begin to silt in and they'll just be non-functional at that point.
All right, one of the speakers asked about the ITT covenant, that goes back a long ways on required to be a golf course in perpetuity, and I don't think, first of all, that's an item for the city. I think that's a private matter between the property owners and ITT, but if you could address that.
We heard that at the meeting in December, and so we went back and did our research. We had a national title insurance company look at that, and our property is not subject to any such covenant, and we could not find any such covenant recorded against other properties. If it were a covenant, that would be between the homeowner and at that point probably ITT, not us or the city.
All right, thank you. I think we talked about.
There are 14 covenants and restrictions on this entire complex. It being 1996.
Well, all right. Let me let the attorney address that. I mean, because I think this is a private matter that has nothing to do with the city. So
Correct.
If you would.
I can address. Sorry about that. Nasa Borkert, Assistant City Attorney for the record. Any private covenants that may be on the property is just that, private. When the city's looking at rezoning matters like this, they cannot look at private covenants. That's something that would be a civil matter between the property, whatever the covenants say, between the property owner and whoever is charged with enforcing those covenants. From the city's perspective, we look at title issues as it pertains to ownership or easements, and that's done at the platting level. We look at that, but we don't enforce private covenants. We only enforce our land development code and our comprehensive plan and the code of ordinances.
I think a couple people talked about maintenance of the buffers in the forested area. I think you've answered that. That would be your owners association.
That would be the owners association, and they would be, whether they were a pond, it would be maintained by the association, and if it was going back to natural, it would be just that and would be placed under conservation easement.
Right, and the last speaker that we had online was concerned about being able to mow the area that's behind her house.
I believe that had to do with this right here,
Okay.
sir. Again, here's their property line, and this whole area has been maintained by those homeowners down to the water's edge, and that's fine with us.
All right, those are the items that I had written down. Do you have any others?
Yeah, I had a couple, and I guess if we look at them collectively, it impacts your decision. And it was, there's a lot of conversation. Can you put up the comparison of one, please? And try to get to the distilled and very fast. You know that the city's plan is, the staff wants this to be a view, and it's 700 and 800 feet and 1,000 feet. And up here, it's 400 to 600 feet. So when you have to place the units in this smaller area, as opposed to here, what happens? We get smaller lots. And the city, when we met with the city and the citizens then, we were trying to get back to lots that were compatible. And as it affects track 3, those are 12,000 foot lots. They're larger lots than those that are adjacent. And then the ones at the southern end of track 3 are consistent they're about anywhere from 8 to 10,000 square feet. So it is this whole idea of a balance between this view shed protection issue, how big, how small, what we put in it. I mean, if we can do stormwater in there, then we can preserve more open space and make buffers larger. If we have to do something like this, then it forces design standards to be more dense and urban-like, as opposed to consistent with the neighborhood. So it's a balancing. This view shed issue is subjective. Whatever you choose will not be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. But we assert that by our plan, particularly if you do the one that shows on track 1 with the ponds. Next one, please. That when all this becomes pond, property values happen to be benefited. We can fit the larger size lots instead of making these lots here. And we have opportunities to do more creative design that would benefit the community. And also by doing this, we're able to put larger lots and less lots on track 3. So we think it's a better balance than just saying nothing and then forcing more dense development. So that kind of have a hybrid of the questions of buffers, size of lots that we had. There was a question that if the city staff proposal was the one that you went with, what would happen? And again, the city proposal would force us to design smaller lots in a more dense community and allow us less opportunities for, as you see in the middle, recreation spaces. So that's why we feel our plan is better and it provides more opportunity for us to do some planning. I'll say in my personal opinion that city staff would like guidance that if you go with our plan, that we could then entertain some new ideas, including adding additional stormwater storage and drainage that would help the flooding that happens up in that area sometimes. We could address the issue of parks. We could address the issue on track 9 that would improve the drainage. So that's kind of where we see it. And other than that, I think a lot of the questions were asked. Fire mitigation was asked. If it goes back to natural, what would happen? It just goes back to forest the same way that this exists today, same way it exists up there. And I mean, I don't know what the city does as far as.
Yeah, Mr. Schmidt, let me add to that because that was one I was going to not interrupt you with, but the fire-wise mitigation, I mean, ever since if everyone was here in 1998 when we had the bad wildfires, our city council, soon after that, I mean, when we became a city, we have a pretty stringent fire hazard mitigation program that code enforcement runs. So we have code enforcement officers that go around the city too, and we get calls from neighbors if it doesn't meet specific standards and buffers with the vegetation that we do maintain, fire hazard mitigations, part of our code requirements.
I don't have anything else that I think we missed, sir.
Thank you very much. Comes back to the board now for a motion or discussion or whatever you have in mind. You have a question? All right, go ahead.
Okay, my question, Mr. Chimento.
Yes, I'm sorry.
On your conceptual layout for number 2, for track number 1 there.
This one right here?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
That proposed pond in the northwest quadrant.
Here?
North,
Yes.
to the west, to the west, yes. Is that where the largest, the highest numbers of arsenic is found?
No, this is the old drive range right here. And again, it would be in this general area. The clubhouse was here and you went out of the clubhouse and you went to the drive range. So it was in this general area. These ponds are just generally located. So we're going to have to design around that issue.
What are the total number of units that you're proposing for that track?
For this track here,
Yes.
well, again, it's not hard design, so until we actually get into that, but this is roughly about 150, roughly is what we estimate in this track according to our plan, with the ponds all around, a buffer along the roadway, and recreation in the middle.
Okay, I have one more question for
Okay, go ahead.
staff. What is the standard procedure environmentally for testing for the contaminants on that land in terms of the depth?
We don't have those codes. Those are regulated by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and they have specific standards for contamination assessment, and that's what we kind of drafted in our code that they follow. They're going to need to follow those standards. That's what we're going to anticipate.
Thank you.
Right, and we have one more question down there. Yes.
So your comprehensive plan and your land development code has a formula that says basically for every 1,000 residents, you have to provide 8 acres of park. But that is for the actual development. So there is no requirement in your land development code that any developer provide an off-site recreation facility for the community. But that being said, this is a PUD or an MPD. It is negotiated. And we have talked about the possibility of providing a park area and working with the city with your park impact fees and working with the land, because we do think, and we've heard from lots of people about that, but we haven't been able to get there because under the city's concept, there just isn't enough land to locate our units and to provide a park. We think that if this plan is approved, that we can do something very interesting here or somewhere in this region for a park that is both for our development and the community.
All right. One more question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Real quick. So the agreement term is 7 years. The LDC, I thought, said that that was a maximum of 5 years. It could be just a small technicality, or I could be talking about the wrong section. Can staff speak to that?
Yeah, you're correct. It's 5 years in the code, but then, you know, a development agreement is done by ordinance. So we are able to have the ability to extend that time.
Okay. Relative to what board member Sybil said, the PSP specifically has Parks and Recreation as an acceptable use. So just for the consideration of the board, that it might be in that track 9 area, but perhaps something can be worked out with the city because it would be in that zoning. The track to the soundboard guy, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Yeah, so the clarification about the 1 unit per acre. Yeah, so the track 3 with the staff's recommendation would basically squeeze more into track 1 as I'm hearing
Yes.
You say. You know, so for the board's consideration, I think track 3, I personally would lean with the applicant's view of that. Track 1, I think that there's a lot of difference between the staff and the developer. I think that one probably needs to go back to the compromise drawing board and find something in the middle there. So those are more of my statements. Oh yeah, and the VPZ thing, we should be charged with defining that so that current and other golf course neighbors will know what the heck they're up against. I mean, it was a tough position for the staff to be in, tough for the developers, tough for us as well. But if you know what the rules are, it's a lot easier to cope with these things. So I'll shut up now.
Right. Thank you. Any more down there? I know we have one here. Jake got it. All right. No other questions? No other questions from the board?
Suzanne Nicholson over here in Zoom has a question from the board. The question that I had was back on your Plan 1. What is the separation between Plan 1 on the east to the existing development?
Tract 1, conceptual layout 1, was allowing the area between these homes and the back of our proposed homes to be 50 feet and go back to natural. We could supplement with trees and undergrowth so that it would be 50 feet. You know, I think we measured this as about 60 feet wide. So to give you an idea, that would be about a 50-foot natural buffer that would be placed into a conservation easement under layout 1.
So, I'm sorry, they didn't span over to the image before you started talking. So I'm talking to the right side of the plan.
Here?
To the existing, no, or one more over to the white space. Keep going over to the white space to the right side of the plan, where the existing neighborhood is.
Correct.
What is the separation between your development and the existing neighborhood?
50 feet.
So we have 50 feet between new houses and existing houses?
It would be 50 feet under this concept. It would be 50 feet of natural vegetated buffer, letting it go back. Or under 2, we could put the stormwater in that area and increase that to at least 100. We
Okay.
think the latter is better because it brings more value to both sides of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And then I have a procedural question, which kind of relates back to the previous board members' comments with regard to, I think I want to compliment both the staff because I think they've done a superior job at analysis and making recommendations for consideration. And I also think the applicant has done a great job responding to the residents' and neighbors' requests for consideration. It really seems like there's a blend of the applicant's recommendation as well as the staff recommendation that would probably yield the best solution for this consideration. I guess I'm looking for guidance for the board in terms of our voting. It seems like we have to vote it up or down, and if we vote it up, that we all agree, does that mean that the applicants and the staff still keep working and perhaps come to a compromise? Or, you know, so procedurally, I'm looking for guidance.
Nasa Borkert, City Attorney for the record. So the recommendation of the board can be whatever the board sees fit. You don't have to go with one or the other. You can blend it. You can go with one or you can go with the other. It's really up to the board's pleasure as to where this lands and how it goes to city council. Any recommendation made here will go to the city council and the city council will take that into consideration. But the motion would need to include any changes that are made. As you can see on page 10, but it's actually the agenda item at the bottom of the agenda item. There's a recommended action. That recommended action is what staff is recommending occur. However, as I said before, that can be modified in any way the motion maker on the board sees fit.
All right, I think we have one more board question.
Regarding Trek 3, had the planners given it any consideration about not backing cars out onto Lakeview Parkway? I don't know what the classification of that road is, whether it's a arterial road or a local road, but have you given any other consideration of egress and ingress into those 30 or 15 driveways?
Yes, sir. That is a collector road as classified under the city. Our traffic engineer can talk about turning movements and those types of things, but we looked at that. We talked with staff multiple times about different ideas. We believe that works and satisfied the technical traffic issues and safety things, but if the planning board has an idea that they want us to consider, we're open to do that also. Yes, Bob. I'm sorry, Bob would like to say one thing. Bob Dickinson.
If you go to the blow up, you'll see the turnout. You go to I think it's the 3 slides later. Okay. So, Mr. Albano, to answer your question, I don't know if you can see this, but these are pairs. Front entry garages with a turnout right here, so that remember, these are 200 foot deep, so they can back out of the garage, they can turn, and then they can come out on to Lakeview without backing up. That's the schematic that we're working towards.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the board?
I just have one additional comment. I'm just concerned, according to the Land Development Code 2.05.05, letter D, the proposed development must not create an unreasonable hazard or nuisance or constitute a threat to the general health, welfare, or safety of the city's inhabitants. I'm just concerned that the environmental report was not provided prior to this meeting, with the fact that that was previously a golf course what was treated, the land was treated for use as such. And then when we're looking at the largest tract that you want to develop the majority of the homes on, what is the long-term, I'm really concerned about that, the long-term risk to the future residents of that tract. So I just wanted to,
I can answer that from a layman's. Our gentleman that performed this is sick, so he did not want to come here. So we asked him that. At the end of the day, when this is done, the state and federal government, this is not a unique issue, particularly in Florida with golf courses. So the state and federal government dictate how it's remediated, and it will leave the land in such a condition that it's fine for everybody to live, and it meets all the standards. In addition, it's a requirement of this PUD and the city's land development code. So I will tell you that without being the expert on it, my understanding is that when this small area is remediated, it will be like there was nothing ever there.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right. What is the board's pleasure? Remember, we're making a recommendation to city council, whatever that might be. And I think a motion should address whether if you're going to make a motion to approve, address either the applicant or the staff's proposal or a hybrid of the two. I'm sorry, we're done. We're past that. We're back to action. So sorry, everybody's had their chance.
My motion would be to table this discussion and let the developer or the applicant and the staff go back for another round to try to close the gap between the disparity of tracks 1 and 3. I think that's what the bulk of this is down to, and I think there could be some common ground.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that motion.
All right, first we have to have a second.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
So is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, there's a second online, so now you can make your.
I'd like to amend to also encourage the city to charge the planning board with defining the BPZ specifically.
Okay.
I'd like to also amend that motion to include that the city council direct the planning board to define specifically the VPZ guidelines for future developments like this.
All right.
Ex-golf course communities.
It is, sorry.
So with regard to the amendment, before you today is this particular development and not the actual land development code. So if you'd like to ask that the city council look at the view protection zone section and send it back to you guys to figure out more specifics there, you can do that. But as far as this application, that should be done separately outside of this application request. And you can do it, at the end of the meeting when you have some time to bring up issues, you can do that.
I withdraw the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Somebody read the motion again. Do we have that?
May I make one comment to the motion to the board?
Sorry, I didn't let anybody else speak, so we're done. We're back to the board. Irene, can you read back the motion?
The motion was to table and have staff and the applicant go back and try and mediate the differences between track 1 and track 3.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion and a second. We will take a vote. Irene, will you do the roll call?
Mr. Albano. Mrs. Lucas. Ms. Nicholson.
Yes.
Mr. Scully.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon. Ms. Shank.
yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, so the motion that was approved was to table it and come back with a resolution on those couple issues.
Do you have a time certain?
There was not a time certain. So thank you all very much. I know we sat through a long time here, but Hopefully you got to ask your questions and got some answers. And I appreciate all of you coming out and thank you for being respectful during this.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Anything else from the staff? Any other business? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Excuse me, we
So moved.
still
Is
have
there a second?
any other issues from staff or planning board?
What'd she say? All right, Irene, there is a motion and a second to adjourn. Can you call the roll?
Mr. Albano? Yes. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lucas? Mrs. Lucas?
Hey, we're doing a roll call. Sorry about that.
Roll call to adjourn. Mrs. Lucas, yes or no?
Okay. Ms. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Scully? Mr. Lemon? Ms. Shank? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
We have
Thank you. We are
adjournment 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.